around $10,000 in a lifetime. That's real money. That used to be your money. Tangerine Free Daily Bank Account.
All of my
Find out how to
technology
get
is
this great
fucking
offer.
dead. Oh, I farted. You okay? Ugh. Okay. Yeah, we're going. Fuck. So annoying. Oh my god.
A policeman uses his car to stop a speeding car from plowing into people. What's the easiest way to save a life? While we figure it out, let's enjoy more acts of kindness, just because they're so uplifting. The average salary in the US is roughly $50,000.
This is very frustrating. Top news. Fucking global. International. Fucking annoying. Everything else is from fucking 8 years ago.
Greetings and salutations. In a galaxy far, far away, you will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy than the Mos Eisley Spaceport. However, here in the United States of America, if you're looking for a hive of scum and villainy, you won't need to look much further than the mainstream corporate news media. At least that's what the findings from the latest annual digital news report from the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism at Oxford tells us.
Turning
The
on.
report, which is based on surveys of over 92,000 news consumers spread across 46 countries around the globe, the United States ranks last in media trust at just 29%. The report explains that in the United States, there are more people who distrust the news than trust it, and that political divides fuel much of this mistrust in the U.S. Resentment and anger are stoked by polarized TV networks such as right-leaning Fox News, One America News, and Newsmax, and left-leaning CNN and MSNBC. Talk about true hives of scum and villainy. Boy, do those sum it up. I mean, seriously, how can we trust the news spewed at us during your typical Tucker Carlson or Rachel Maddow news broadcast when they both use the same "don't take us seriously" defense when sued over comments they made on their respective shows? After Maddow accused One America Network of being a paid Russian propaganda outlet, a federal judge threw out OAN's lawsuit against her, stating, "The court finds that the medium of the alleged defamatory statement makes it more likely that a reasonable viewer would not conclude that the contested statement implies an assertion of objective fact." Meanwhile, our good buddy Tucker had a judge rule that he is not stating actual facts about the topics he discusses and is instead engaging in exaggeration and non-literal commentary. And yet these corporate toadies wonder why the American public clearly have lost all trust in the news they spew at us in between commercials.
What is happening?
So today, my friends, let's bring some truth back in the news business as we start watching the polls.
If you want to know what's going on in your city, in your streets, you want to rise above the sheep, let me show you what you seek. See the uprisings, opioids, deep state on steroids, drone strikes, mass graves, war hawks and dead slaves, systemic deceptions, manipulate your mind, but the truth is our weapon, so open up your eyes.
Welcome everyone to Watching the Hawks. I am Tyrell Ventura.
And I'm Amisha.
I
And
would
joining us
love
today
to know
discuss
where
the
my
current
hat
state
might
of
be.
news media is a man who's seen every facet of 21st century journalism, from online to broadcast. The founder of Truth in Media, investigative journalist Ben Swan. Ben, always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys, for having me on.
So Ben, look, we've talked about the state of decline we've seen in mainstream news media and journalism on this show since its inception. As I mentioned earlier, the Reuters Institute study found that the United States sits dead last in trust in media. I wanted to ask you, looking at the current state of things, what do you believe is the major factors in this lack of trust today?
Well, I think it's a couple of different things.
This
It
is
was a
fine.
great kind of
This is
long
what I
shot
like.
as you guys started the show, because you're explaining that the current moment that we're sitting in right now says nobody trusts media, including the media. They don't even trust themselves. And so when they say things, they say, don't take us seriously because we're just engaging in hyperbole and some kind of commentary that really reasonable people, which is an insane statement, by the way, reasonable people wouldn't believe us if we said it, right? Now, obviously, this is what their lawyers are saying because this is the case they're making, but it actually goes back into the mid-'90s. If you go all the way back to the mid-'90s,
Okay, let's go.
back when Roger Ailes launched
Yo.
Fox News, right? That was actually the
You wanna
beginning
go for a
of
walk or not?
this, because Roger Ailes began to look at news in a very
Come back
different
and
way.
fucking-
He wasn't as interested in creating news that people necessarily wanted so much as trying to feed a certain diet to the viewer, which in turn caused the viewer to begin to expect a certain diet, right? And so it's almost become a cyclical kind of a situation where you started with, we're going to tell you what to think all the time. We're going to become predictable in the things that we say. And now we've reached the point where the viewer actually dictates to, I think, the media cycle what they expect to hear. And so now you have, if there's any kind of a quote unquote rogue journalist working at Fox or working at MSNBC or CNN who says something off script from what the viewers expect, there's actually outrage. And so what I always like to say is, it's not so much that the viewer wants to be informed anymore. The viewer wants to be validated in the belief system they already hold, and therefore the media is simply responding to that now. It's a horrible cycle.
Oof, that is a great way to put it. Now catering to what the viewer wants to hear validated. Great way to put it.
And Ben, I know you've talked about this exhaustively before, but with the advent of smartphones and online content creation, we've seen a dramatic rise of citizen journalists. Basically, anybody can be a journalist these days as long as they have a smartphone. And we've also seen the growth of independent online news sites that a lot of people are looking towards more than your original big three or your cable news stations. However, the world of independent news, it gives us good journalists. It also gets lost in the drive for clicks and view counts and things like that. And these sites also, for better or worse, they're basically taking over when it comes to monetization or, overzealous companies like YouTube and Facebook basically making stars of people that just a year ago we didn't even know who they were. What is the state of independent news today, and can it fill the void in trust for mainstream news? Because a lot of people, to Tyrell's point, George, just a moment ago, have totally left mainstream news and are now geared towards these other sources.
Yeah, they have, and I think they rightfully left a lot of these sources, right? Because they've walked away from cable news. So many people kind of fleeing that ecosphere. And we've seen the same thing happen with broadcast legacy media, right? People don't necessarily turn to them. And so what we're finding now is that, yes, when people are looking for information, they go online. And I would say from about 2010 to about 2017, we saw an enormous rise in independent news media, in independent news personalities. Yes, absolutely, being able to get information out, some of it good information and some of it bad information. And so what we found is, though, in the last about 4 years, from 2017 to now, something else has happened. And that is that YouTube and Facebook have gone from being the platform from which independent news media could rise and gain notoriety to now becoming the publishers that decide which new media you're allowed to see and hear. And so it's created a whole new problem that I think we're just on the kind of the forefront of. It's a new problem to say we have media being picked and chosen by major corporations like Google and Facebook. They decide what you see, they decide what you hear. And so now you have a new void of what is the platform from which independent media can be seen.
It's interesting when we talk about that, is because it kind of leaves the news consumer, or just the average citizen, in a really terrible dilemma, because they know that what they're seeing, they don't trust what they're seeing on television. Now they're either not seeing or being told they can't trust what they see on their own. where does that leave us news consumers and those people out there who say, look, all I want to get at the end of the day is just tell me what is reality, or at least tell me what we're all agreeing is the acceptable facts of the story.
Right, and I think this is the bigger issue, right? So shows like yours are so important because what you guys do is you're laying out information in a very factual way. Now, obviously, you have commentary that's a part of that, but as long as you're providing source information, I think one of the things that is most lacking in the media today is source information. You may say something as a news anchor, you may say something as a news commenter, but what is the source of that information? The other thing that is so problematic is allowing these, paid spokespeople essentially for big pharma and for defense contractors to be allowed to be experts on most media, and they come on and they're simply selling. They're salesmen, they're pitchmen who go on TV acting as if they are some kind of independent expert giving analysis. That's not what they're doing. And so I think the only way to resolve some of this is to create a system that allows for better authentication of source material. You may be saying it, but why are you saying what you're saying and what is it based upon? And the last thing I'd say about that is there is a truth deficit. We need to get back to the idea that there is truth. Your opinion is not simply the truth. And so when we talk about a lot of these issues that have data and facts behind them, what is that data? What are those facts? Not to be skewed, but to be laid out and then discussed in a serious and sober way. But I got to tell you guys, so many folks, and you guys know this, have their hands in the pot. It's very difficult to even share that kind of information without it becoming tainted.
Very true, and the tragedy is I see that on both sides of mainstream journalism and even on independent journalism today. You see how independent journalism has really shifted to be just that thing of, well, it's whatever I say is truth, and if you disagree with me, then I'm going to get with big warrants for more time fighting each other, and actually that's a fucking something part. It's pretty ridiculous at the end of the day. Man, I want to thank you as always for coming down and joining us today and enlightening our audience and keep up the great work out there. Is one of the people out there truly fighting to bring some truth in media, as your company says. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, guys.
Well, Ty, Vince Vaughn left us with quite a few things to think about. Confirmation bias, how Fox News basically ushered in this new wave when it comes to how news media is actually even taken in by the American public, but also what's going on with this investigative journalism from citizen journalists and how that's really taken off across social media.
No, he definitely did. And the things that I see when I look at the news media today is I just don't feel that there's actually news, because it's kind of like you still see the same four stories being discussed and then no deviation from that whatsoever. Even when you get into the independent news circle, it's kind of like I mentioned earlier, where there's so much infighting in independent news between, well, mine's better, that you lose the point because it all becomes about personality rather than what should be being talked about.
Infighting and clickbait journalism. At the end of the day, social media, by and large, has made it very easy for a lot of people to become journalists without actually having a journalism background, but it has also pushed people to go to the extremes of either side in the types of news that they report and what they call news.
And as you mentioned to me off camera, as we were during earlier today too, is that confirmation bias that so many people are looking for when they turn on the news now is I want to hear what I want to hear and nothing else. And I don't want to let anything. That's not a new symptom. That's not a new problem, is it?
It's not new at all, actually, with the advent of cable news, but also as we saw and that move away from the Walter Cronkites and some of our old greats, we saw that more Americans wanted to have things that they already believed reinstilled by what they watched and what they read. And I think news media and the giants behind it actually picked up on that. So now they know who their base is, and they're going to continue to just say things that they think are going to continue to get their base watching.
And what did we learn from everything today? At the end of the day is that, look, Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow know that what they're saying is complete and utter opinion and not news. So remember that when you tune in, that you're just getting their opinions. You're not actually getting the news. All right, everybody, as we go to break, remember that you can also start watching the Hawks on demand through the brand new portable TV app, which, of course, is available on all platforms, so definitely check it out. Coming up, we enter a world of insanity, a world of narcissism, a world of 120, 140 characters, as we delve into the current state of social media. So stay tuned.
Social media, the ever-present form of connecting people from around the globe, was designed develop broader community, and strengthen humanity around shared interests and thought-provoking conversations. Though its roots were flowery, its ends have been anything but. The internet boom of the late 90s was fueled by advancements in technology, with group chatting, blogs, and music sharing being its primary components. It wasn't until the early 2000s that social media as we know it today became a reality. It all started with a little thing called MySpace, introduced in 2003. By 2006, MySpace was the most visited website on the internet. MySpace launched the careers of several independent music artists. It also opened the door for YouTube, which debuted in 2005, but really picked up steam 2 years later, launching the careers of pop stars like Justin Bieber. YouTube later became a top source for news and commentary content, as well as campaign ads due to its reach and ease of use. To date, though, Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook and Jack Dorsey's Twitter are the giants of social media. With over 2.85 billion monthly users, Facebook isn't losing steam, despite attacks from the two major US political parties and calls for reforms. Twitter famously banned former President Trump after the January 6 attacks at the US Capitol and faced conservative backlash from it, with some flocking to Parler and a new site, Getter, launched by a former Trump aide. And then there's TikTok. What once was seen as a kid's social media haven filled with dance videos, short monologues, and acting skits is now mainstream, where political campaigns, activists, celebrities are all flocking. The latest wave of social media makes regular people instant stars, and the lure of quick fame and fortune is the new gold rush. But social media has also been used by the FBI and other policing entities to track criminal activity, used by foreign actors to interfere in US elections, and cyber criminals to steal loads of cash. Social media has also raised several concerns regarding body image, self-image, bullying, and sex trafficking. Joining me now to further discuss the social media juggernaut is Jared Ball, Professor of Communications at Morgan State University. Welcome, Professor.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Professor Ball, social media had a good start, or at least was marketed with well intentions. I remember reading Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Bone, and the fact that people had moved away from this society of being in organized groups, the PTA meetings, all those things that folks got excited about in the 80s, 90s, probably the 70s as well. Going into the 2000s, we became much more of an insular group. So the early 2000s brought about change with people being connected from across the world, but it also brought challenges. What do you think happened, and what challenges do social media users face today?
Well, for me, what I see happening today was predictable, and I count myself among what was probably a small group of people who, from the beginning, never saw the advance of social media or media technology as a net positive. I come out of the camp that has long argued that technology does not change social relationships; it enhances them. So what we're seeing today are problems that have been intensified through new media technology and increasing capability to communicate, replicated throughout the world and in people's local communities. So that's why we've seen, in many cases, we've seen no collapse in wealth divides or in racial wealth divides, for instance. We've seen a greater capture of global wealth since the advent of the internet and the rise of social media. We've seen, to the point you raised already, the state's ability to surveil its citizens and to graft social media onto the pre-existing political intent of the internet and media technology in this country from day one, as expressed by those from day one, which is to prevent counterinsurgency around the world and from within the United States. So that's always been the purpose, and the early promotional campaigns of even those who maybe have been naively involved in the creation of some of these particular platforms has easily been seen to be just that, naive and fantastical, as all those old social antagonisms have only worsened in the last decades or so.
So true. Look, social media, at the end of the day, let's be real, is big bucks. Both for the platforms that have gone public, but also for the influencers and the campaign, and also political campaigns. Ad space on Facebook has proved its weight in gold for politicians eager to reach broader audiences. In the 2020 presidential election, much like the 2016, the platform has been called out for its failure to remove false or misleading campaign ads from both parties. What are your thoughts? Should social media be held liable for spreading fake news? And is that the biggest sin that we've seen from social media to this day?
Oh, not to me at all. I mean, I think there's a lot has been made out of certainly the banning of Trump and folks like that is misleading. I think the situation is misrepresenting the situation. That first of all, censorship always ends up targeting the politically left more than anything else. So we should always be clear on that. Again, what we're seeing happen is an intensification of what has always been happening in this country. With Du Bois called it an issue of a propaganda of history. There has always been a heavy dose of propaganda and psychological warfare waged against its citizens and abroad. So social media is just, again, the latest and it advanced technologically. It's aiding that process. But that's ultimately what we're seeing here. So we're seeing a shutting down of not only people on the right and people like Trump, but a lot of those on the left. We've had outlets like Hood Communist and All African People's Revolutionary Party and other left progressive radical revolutionary outlets targeted just as well by the United States and social media platforms, and giving undue and I think unwarranted power to private individuals who, by the way, are doing the same thing musically. So YouTube, as you opened up with, has turned itself into a new form of the old record industry, where literally the old players are brought back in, like Lear Cohen, to run the music wing, who have been seen as ignoble actors in certainly hip hop for decades. And then we see the same thing happening with Jack Dorsey making a deal with Jay-Z to buy Tidal to now increase the influence there as well. So what we're really just seeing is a heightened ability for those to consolidate power and the ability to communicate and control communication and ultimately in league with the state to put us all under surveillance. And that has just been a long process that has only been intensified and made more easy with the advent of this new technology.
Great points. Great points.
And Professor Ball, at the end of the day, social media never forgets, like elephants. We've seen Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the like. They're harbingers of free speech, but they've also resulted in many individuals losing their jobs, losing their reputations based on what they post. Where do free speech and cancellation meet? And do you think social media has advanced America's consciousness to hate speech, racism, and other forms of intolerance?
I don't think it's advanced its consciousness. I think it's forced the society to confront it in new ways that I don't think it's truly prepared to deal with. So I don't think anybody should be censored. I think that there should obviously be laws in place to prevent what we already have, miscarriages, misuse of communication, the famous shouting fire in a theater and all that kind of stuff. We want to have laws established to protect that. We want to have laws also to protect free speech, and the idea of censoring or canceling always is going to redound against the most politically left. So those of us who are concerned with radical revolutionary change should never encourage censorship. We should encourage a more radical interaction with what people are saying and thinking. And we should look at the way institutions in this society, beginning with education and media, primarily dominant among them, encourage some of the more harmful and hateful views that we all continue to hold of one another. These are encouraged by dominant institutions and worldviews that continue to maintain sway over these, again, dominant institutions. So that should be what we turn our focus to, not trying to catch individuals saying one or another thing and censoring and punishing them, but looking at what's producing that consciousness and address ourselves to that.
Thank you so much today for coming on, Professor, and educating our audience on these issues concerning social media. Always a pleasure having you on the show, and keep up the great work out there.
Appreciate you. Likewise, anytime.
Well, Ty, Professor Ball just kind of laid everything out there, from Jay-Z and his influence on Twitter to the fact that these pushes, the removal of Trump from Twitter and from other social media sites, that may have excited people on the left, but at the end of the day, that could lead us down a very dangerous path, not only for free speech, but also for a lot of our organizers and people who are, going hard in the paint, for lack of a better term, to make America, make the world a better place.
It is tough, isn't it? Because on one hand, you understand, it's a debate that rages, and it's a good debate that we're having, because I think it needs to be had. Because we understand that, yes, these companies should be able to decide who is or is not on their platforms. At the same time, though, these companies are also heavily influenced by the government. And that creates a nasty space that we're trying to figure out, we're trying to land in, of saying, okay, what what freedom of speech should be allowed and what it shouldn't. Is it total freedom of speech? I think a lot of people would say yes, because remember, at the end of the day, freedom of speech is there to protect not just popular speech, but ultimately it's to protect unpopular speech.
Absolutely, but it does not in any way prevent you from actually having consequences. At the end of the day, we see person after person either get fired from their jobs. We've seen students lose scholarships time after time for saying things that weren't necessarily jiving well with the public.
And that is the essence of social media at the end of the day right there. And that's the delicate balance we're all trying to find with this brand new form of communication that, hey, look, I'm an old head. I didn't have to worry about this in high school, but there's a lot of kids out there who definitely have to worry about using social media.
You made me feel older too, because social media wasn't a thing until I was in college, so I didn't have it in high school either.
Right? All right, well, these two analog hosts, no, just kidding. All right, everybody, that is our show for you today. Remember, in this world, you're definitely not told that you have loved enough, so I tell you all, I love you. I am Tyrone.
And I'm Amisha Cross.
Keep on watching all those hawks out there and have a great day and night.
Fix Auto, the first words that should come to mind after an accident.
Evening on the tarmac in Toronto, but we know that there's still a lot of work to do going forward, and we're going to continue to do that work in cooperation with all levels of government as well as with all Canadians.
Thank you, Mon. This now concludes the press conference. If you next day à la conférence de presse, happy birthday, everyone. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. The conference has now ended. Please disconnect your line.
AC. Okay. Okay. Oh, there we go. Very nice. Mama. Mama. Everyone can meet my cat. It's Lindsay. Gosh. As in, shut up, MD. I call her Mama. Because that's what she says when she talks. She goes, Mama. So I called her Mama. I also like to think of animal. Mama! 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 And then this is the other one. This is Gigi. They're both very fat. She's a little bit more on the fat side. Okay. Everyone gets love. I get a face full of cat hair. We should go. No, I'm sorry, Gigi. Come back. Gigi. These are worth investing in. That's gross. Come here, Mama. Mama. You like this thing. Oh, you okay, Jack? Gigi. Gigi. Oh, sorry. I just dropped my sunglasses on you. Okay. You okay, Jack? You okay? Not you. You okay, Jack? Hey! What's the matter? It too hot for you? Where you going, Gigi? Gigi! Yes. Ugh. You don't like the glove, eh? Jack. Here, Lindsay. Okay, Jack? Hey. Okay, we're done. Okay. That was very smart.
Most Canadians spend on average 55 cents a day on bank fees. That's over $200 a year, and around $10,000 in a lifetime. That's real money that used to be your money. Tangerine Free Daily Bank Account. Find out how to get this great offer when you become a new client.
A reversal, the WHO's Director General said Wednesday, from the majority of COVID vaccines going to high-income countries, instead going to low-income nations.
Even while hundreds of millions of people are still waiting for their first dose, some rich countries are moving towards booster doses.
The World Health Organization is now calling for a moratorium on vaccine boosters until at least the end of September. It's part of a push to vaccinate at least 10% of the population of every country. Last week, the Israeli president received a third shot, kicking off his country's campaign to give booster doses to people 60 and older, in part to tackle the spreading Delta variant. It's a rollout that should be paused, according to the WHO, until the global vaccine supply is beefed up.
We need instead to focus on those people who are most vulnerable, most at risk of severe disease and death to get their first and second doses.
And the UN agency says so far more than 4 billion vaccine doses have been administered globally. More than 80% have gone to high and upper middle income countries, even though they account for less than half of the world's population. The White House suggesting Wednesday it may not heed the WHO's request to delay additional shots.
We also, in this country, have enough supply to ensure that every American has access to a vaccine. We will have enough supply to ensure if the FDA decides that boosters are recommended for a portion of the population, to provide those as well.
The White House press secretary noting the U.S. has donated more than 110 million vaccines to roughly 65 countries. Now, parts of the U.S. are seeing a spike in new coronavirus cases. Florida this week is setting a new record for COVID hospitalizations, with the most patients there since the beginning of the pandemic. Just 5 states now account for nearly half of new infections in the past week across the U.S., with Florida leading the country in hospitalizations. The state has more than 11,000 coronavirus patients seeking care. Florida's governor downplaying the outbreak and promising to block mask mandates and tight restrictions.
In terms of shutting down, we're not shutting down.
Last week, he issued an executive order barring schools from requiring face coverings, saying it should be up to parents to decide. Melissa Duggan, City News.
Hello and welcome to WION's live broadcast from London. I'm Benji Hire, and in this bulletin we'll bring you the latest updates on stories developing around the world. First, the headlines. The heroes of India's men's hockey team come onto WION to celebrate a seminal moment in their careers. Captain Manpreet Singh says the bronze medal will inspire a new generation, whilst India's goalkeeper says they've answered critics who questioned their credentials. The European Union condemns the Taliban's latest deadly attacks in Afghanistan and demands an urgent and permanent ceasefire. The EU says that some of the acts of the terror group amount to war crimes and must be investigated. The Russian and Uzbek armies hold joint drills at Uzbekistan's border with Afghanistan as Kabul struggles to peg back a Taliban offensive following the withdrawal of US-led troops. India's foreign minister visits Iran to attend the inauguration ceremony of the country's new president, Ibrahim Raisi. This is Mr. Jaisankar's second trip to Iran in just a month. India marks 2 years after the former state of Jammu and Kashmir was bifurcated into 2 union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Japan extends its COVID-19 emergency curve to cover more than 70% of its population as a record surge in cases strains hospitals in the Olympics host city of Tokyo and other parts of the nation. Taliban's unrelenting terror has taken several lives, and in yet another frightening attack, the insurgents have killed historian Abdullah Atifi in the Urgazan province. He was taken out of his home by gunmen on Wednesday night. The incident took place the same day the Taliban issued a statement asking the United States not to fuel an exodus in Afghanistan through its visa program. The statement by the group read, and I quote, "The offer of visas and encouragement to leave their home country for those who worked with the American occupation as interpreters is plain interference in our country. We urge," according to the Taliban, the United States, according with other countries, to desist from such interventionist policies. From the Taliban. Now, US military officials have warned that increasing violence seriously hurts Afghanistan's chances of finding a peaceful end to decades of war. US State Department officials have meanwhile defended the path to peace in Afghanistan, arguing that it supports a just and durable solution.
Our point is that we are supporting a just and durable solution. It is self-evident that the Taliban seek a durable solution. It is not in their interest to attempt to wrest power by force and only to be displaced down the road after
The war was brought to the capital for the first time in months with a bomb and gun attack on Defence Minister Bismillah Mohammadi, which the minister escaped following an attack on Kabul with warnings of more attacks. Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani has accused the Taliban of hypocrisy.
There is no better opportunity to end the 43-year war and bloodshed as foreigners have left the country. After all, it is only the efforts and the swords of the Afghans that keep this country together. The Taliban want hypocrisy, but we who are all sitting here together want unity.
Meanwhile, fighting continues in other parts of Afghanistan too. At least 274 Taliban fighters have been killed. Another 118 have been wounded in the past 24 hours. The Afghan troops are successfully pushing back the insurgents. In a deadly airstrike in the Deydadi district, tens of terrorists have been killed and wounded in their hideout, and a hideout was also destroyed. WION's Anas Malik sent this report from Kabul on the latest developments.
Well, at least 274 Taliban fighters have been killed, another 118 wounded in the past 24 hours as fighting continues in parts of Afghanistan. This has been claimed by the Afghan government. The Taliban are yet to confirm or deny this claim by the Afghan government. On the other hand, due to the ongoing conflict that has intensified in the past 3 months, let alone more than 1 million Afghan families have relocated internally. They're being classified as IDPs or internally displaced persons, says a report. Additionally, it's the 7th day, rather the 8th day, when the fighting in Lashkar Gah, the capital of Helmand, continues. The intense fighting in Lashkar Gah, the capital of Helmand, continues. Fighting also continues in Herat along the border with Iran. We saw airstrikes coming in. The government forces, with the help of US forces, US aerial support to be precise, is trying to push back the Taliban. The Taliban seem to be on the offensive and they don't seem to budge down. On the other hand, the US Special Envoy for Afghan Peace, Zalmay Khalilzad, has said that the Taliban should emphasize on a strategy for the formation of a new government. Anas Malik in Kabul, Afghanistan, for WION World is One.
It's been 6 months since the coup in Myanmar, and many of its citizens are continuing to fight a crackdown on dissent by the military junta. Myanmar's ambassador to the United Nations had now made claims at the world body to highlight the state of affairs in the country. Kwai Mok-Tun has written to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, alleging a massacre by the military junta in the Canning Township in northwest Myanmar in July. The ambassador, who refused to leave his post despite being fired after the coup, wrote that at least 40 bodies were found in the township. The envoy also repeated his call for a global arms embargo of the ruling junta and urged humanitarian intervention from the international community. More than 900 people have been killed in the military crackdown. But political unrest is not the only problem that the Southeast Asian nation is facing. It's also battling a massive coronavirus wave. The country's hospitals have been overwhelmed and residents in cities are struggling to get their oxygen for family members. Earlier this week, the military junta chief extended the state of emergency until August 2023.
We will accomplish the provisions of the state of emergency by August 2023. We must create the conditions to hold a free and fair multi-party general election. We have to make preparations. I pledge to hold a multi-party general election without fail.
The British government has decided to expand its vaccination programme to 16 and 17-year-olds. The UK's Joint Committee on Vaccine and Immunisation, however, made no change to its advice of the government on vaccination to 12 to 15-year-olds.
The United Kingdom is all set to expand its fast-paced vaccination programme. The government announced that it will offer coronavirus vaccinations to all 16 and 17-year-olds. But the country is still not in favour of inoculating those younger than the age of 16. About 1.4 million teenagers will be included in the new rollout.
There is no time to waste in getting on with this. Now we have the JCVI advice on starting that initial first dose in 16 to 17-year-olds. Then I want us to proceed as fast as is practically possible.
The 16 and 17-year-olds will receive the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. The timeline for their second dose has not been finalized yet. For now, UK is only offering vaccines to those over the age of 12 who have underlying conditions or are at high risk. Several nations, including the United States, Canada, and France, are routinely vaccinating children aged 12 and over.
What we haven't yet decided definitively on are the otherwise healthy 12 to 15-year-olds who are at very much lower risk of some of these severe outcomes we're talking about. And we will review the data, and the data allow, then we will obviously want to try and protect them with vaccination as well. But that's a decision we can't make at this point, or rather prefer not to make at this point.
Britain's Health Secretary Sajid Javid said that he'd accept.
Yeah.
Treta Yuga, one of the 4 ages of humankind according to Hinduism, spanning 13 lakh years. The period when Lord Ram, the 7th reincarnation of Vishnu, is born in Ayodhya. The period marked by dharma and morality. 1528 AD, Sunni Mughal Emperor Babur is in India. His army general, Mir Baqi, a Shia, constructs a mosque, destroying a temple marking the birthplace of Lord Ram and building on its foundations what came to be known the Babri Mosque. December 23, 1949, idols of Lord Ram appear inside the mosque, allegedly put there by Hindus. Widespread protests follow. Hindus and Muslims file suits. The government locks the gates and declares the site disputed. Decades of court cases follow. 1st February 1986, a court allows Hindus to pray before the idols. 1989, then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi allows Shilanyas, or a foundation laying ceremony, close to the mosque structure. September 25th, 1990, BJP leader L.K. Advani launches a Rath Yatra, or religious procession, from Somnath to Ayodhya to build support for a Ram temple. December 6th, 1992, hundreds of Karsevaks or volunteers tear down the mosque and a makeshift temple is erected in its place. Massive countrywide riots follow. At least 2,000 are killed. The matter is back in court and on election manifestos of political parties. 2010, the Allahabad High Court divides the disputed land into 3 parts. The order is challenged in the Apex Court, which is yet to pass a judgment.
This is the place where the story began, and this is where millions of Hindus wanted concluded. The birthplace of Lord Ram to have its glory restored with a magnificent temple, marking the holiest site of Hindu worship in the world, Ayodhya.
It's a desire mired more in politics than in faith. Efforts over the years to build a temple have remained disputed. But those who are determined have not stopped working. Prakash Kumar has been carving stone for more than 2 decades. Each carved stone is given a number to denote where it will fit in the final temple structure. It's a bit like Lego. Prakash sits surrounded by its pieces, columns of stones and bricks, many bearing the names of the donors and the places they arrived from.
We are at the VHP workshop for the construction of the Ram temple. This is about 500 meters from a place called Karsevakpuram. And stones like these with Jai Shri Ram written on them, many with engravings, have been arriving here since the 1990s. Truckloads of these stones have been coming regularly, most of them donated, not just by people from across the country, but across the world. The plan is to construct a 2-story temple with a dome on top, which will require 1.75 lakh cubic feet of stone. The people here tell us more than half that number is already here. They're ready to construct a Ram Mandir.
The Samajwadi Party government under Akhilesh Yadav had barred the Janmabhoomi Nyas, the outfit tasked with preparing for temple construction, from bringing stones, citing the Supreme Court status quo that has changed under the current regime. Mohan Srivastava was a young man who participated in the Babri demolition. He went to jail. Today, he guards the base model for the temple. He's confident the structure will be replicated at the Janmabhoomi, a 268-foot long, 140-foot wide, and 128-foot high two-story temple.
एक तरह से इसका निर्माण होगा, नीचे राम जी का बाल रूप रहेगा, ठीक ऊपर वाले खाने में राम सीता रहेंगे.
While Ram Lala's pink sandstone home is being readied, around it, the rest of the city lies in a shambles. Negotiating traffic is a nightmare. Infrastructure is crumbling. There are no new jobs. Development hasn't touched this town. Swachh Bharat has not disturbed its legendary detritus. Mahant Nritya Gopal Das of the Ram Janmabhoomi Nyas, the outfit overseeing the preparations for temple construction, dismisses these concerns as minor.
और विकास करना कराना सरकार का काम है, नगरपाल का काम है, वो जाने उनका काम है.
अयोध्या में तो कुछ नहीं बदला. अयोध्या जैसे कैसे है, कोई विकास नहीं.
Ayodhya is a victim of its political significance. The true face of the temple town is a far cry from the glorious stories of Ram Rajya. With the 67 acres of disputed land and focus, the rest of it is a picture of neglect. Choked drains, blocked roads, heaps of garbage. This is the real Ayodhya.
क्योंकि जब लोग विकास की बात करते हैं तो भाजपा वाले जय श्री राम का नारा लगाते हैं. बहुत सी जय श्री राम के नारे में विकास जो है दब जाता है, विकास पीछे हो जाता है. इसलिए अयोध्या का कोई विकास नहीं. अयोध्या में न बढ़िया सड़कें हैं, न यहाँ कोई पार्क है, न यहाँ पब्लिक मालदार है, न यहाँ कोई अच्छी दुकान है.
Iqbal Ansari is famous because he's his father's son, a prominent figure in the Babri agitation. He receives us in a room reserved for television crews and local newspapers. These days, the visitors are fewer and far between, he rues. People are blinded by political propaganda. They fail to see the kaleidoscope of cultures that Ayodhya is. It was once called Choti Makka, he tells us. It's the town where for years an aarti was performed inside the premises of a mosque. Satyendra Das was the head priest of the Ram Janmabhoomi. He was performing the puja on the day the Babri Masjid was demolished. He joined hands with the Jama Masjid's Imam Bukhari against what he believes is a needless controversy to polarize votes.
सबसे बात करते, हम लोग उस इतिहास को भूल चुके हैं. यहाँ जो मुसलमान रहते सबके साथ उठना बैठना रहना और किसी प्रकार का कोई दोष नहीं करना, उसके नाते कि बाबरी मस्जिद और राम जन्मभूमि के नाते हमारा प्रचार.
Ayodhya belongs to all, he says, not just the Hindus.
93% of Ayodhya's population is Hindu, yet this temple town celebrates its pluralistic culture and past. This town has more than 20 major Islamic shrines, more than 100 mosques, architectural remains of the Buddhist and the Jain periods.
Not everyone is ready to share space though. The ruling BJP's ideological parent, the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, insists only a temple will be built in Ayodhya, not a mosque.
राम जन्मभूमि पर राम मंदिर ही बनेगा और कुछ नहीं बनेगा.
The call finds resonance among a growing number of locals.
भगवान का मंदिर हमारे नेता लोग अपना राजनीति करते हैं, अपना काम बनाते हैं, मंदिर के बारे में कोई विचार नहीं कर रहे हैं.
हिंदू लोग बनाएंगे, सरकार बनाएगी, हमारी की सरकार बनाएगी.
The question of a temple evokes sharp responses. Crowds gather almost instantly. They've waited for 25 years. The time to cede space is past, they feel. This is Guptar Ghat, where Lord Ram is said to have taken a Jal Samadhi. He disappeared in the water. Some of the values that he stood for may also have dissolved.
So why has Ayodhya, the birthplace of Lord Ram, the most ideal ruler in Hindu mythology, the follower of dharma and morality, driven Indians to clashes and bloodshed? Why does it remain the most intractable political problem in this country over 7 decades? Has a sincere effort ever been made to resolve the Ayodhya dispute?
The short answer is no. Successive governments have stirred this pot.
हर चीज का हल लोग कहते हैं कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट क्या करेगा? सुप्रीम कोर्ट एक फैसला सुना के दे सकता है, बाकी काम तो हम दोनों को ही करना है ना।
The effort to exploit the Ram Temple issue for electoral gains is not restricted to one party or ideology. While the right wing kept it simmering for years, the Congress under then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi brought it to a boil. Gandhi and his key strategist Arun Nehru, in a bid to consolidate the Hindu vote, persuaded Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Bir Bahadur Singh to open the lock of the Babri Masjid in 1986 and allowed religious rites to take place inside the disputed structure. In response, the right-wing Vishwa Hindu Parishad launched an agitation to secure the release of the idols of Ram and Sita from what they called captivity. Soon after defying the court's order and laying the foundation of the Ram Temple on 10th November 1989, Rajiv Gandhi launched his campaign from Ayodhya, promising Ram Rajya across the country. Months later, the BJP hijacked the issue, with L.K. Advani launching his Rath Yatra to canvass support for the temple. Over the years, the promise to build a temple found prominence in the party's election manifestos.
इस जजमेंट से राम मंदिर बनाने का, भव्य राम मंदिर बनाने का रास्ता प्रशस्त हुआ है।
The Congress conveniently pulled wool over the eyes of the electorate by showing indignation, despite the party's criminal complicity in the past. Now there's a saffron poster boy in power in Uttar Pradesh who loses no opportunity to remind the world that the temple tops his agenda.
मेरे मानना है संवाद समस्या का सबसे अच्छा समाधान हो सकता है, लेकिन इस संवाद के लिए दोनों पक्ष सहमत हों।
Importantly, the man who chose him for chief ministership, the original Hindutva face, has not visited Ayodhya in the 3 years that he's been prime minister. Ram Temple continues to be an election promise of the BJP.
हम कहते हैं कोई आए या न जाए, उनकी जिम्मेदारी सारा देश की जिम्मेवारी सारे देश की काम है, और जब काम करके तब ना आएंगे मुंह दिखाने के लिए, बिना काम किए कैसे आएंगे? इसलिए वो अभी काम में लगे, काम करने के बाद अपना काम कर देंगे, राम लला के दिव्यता भव्यता ला देंगे, और वहाँ उनका दिव्यता भव्यता आ जाएगी, मंदिर का निर्माण हो जाएगा, तब ना आएंगे, खाली खाली कैसे आएंगे?
This is the Saryu River, the lifeline of Ayodhya. It finds prominent mention in the Ramayana too. It's along the banks of this river that King Dashrath accidentally killed Shravan Kumar. Saryu now serves a political purpose. Mediators of all hues, from political leaders to spiritual gurus, from religious heads to courts, have tried to wade into the troubled waters of the Saryu and failed. Who are these peace brokers? Is it in their interest to achieve peace?
The first time Ram Lalla was co-opted in litigation was in 1949. While the case was being shunted from one court to another, Many outsiders jumped in over the years. As Prime Minister in 1990 and then again in 2003, Chandrasekhar tried to intervene. The attempts fell through. After the demolition of the Babri Masjid in 1992, Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao set up the Liverhan Commission that submitted its report 17 years later, failing to find a solution. Under Atal Bihari Vajpayee's prime ministership, the Ayodhya cell was revived to negotiate between Hindus and Muslims. It soon became defunct. Muhammad Hashim Ansari, the oldest litigant in the case, reached out to other parties, the Akhara Parishad and the Hindu Mahasabha. He died at the age of 95 before the talks could begin. The BJP Subramaniam Swamy urged the Supreme Court to resolve the matter in March 2017. The court suggested a negotiation, saying it's a sentimental issue best resolved by talks. The latest player in the Ayodhya saga is this man, spiritual guru Sri Sri Ravi Shankar.
अच्छा एक संदेश देश भर में जा सकता है यदि दोनों समुदाय पास आए, दोनों समुदाय की सहमति से भव्य राम मंदिर बने.
His visit to the temple town was dubbed as a stunt.
बातचीत करते करते बहुत समय हो गया, 25-30 साल हो गया. अब जो है ना, अब तो मंदिर ही बनेगा, बातचीत का प्रश्न ही नहीं होता.
बात कर रहे हैं, बात हो रही है. अभी रविशंकर जी आए थे श्री नहीं महंत वगैरह मिले थे और ये हाजी महबूब भी मिले थे. सब लोगों से वार्तालाप हो रही है. लग रहा है कि 2018 में हो जाए.
2018 में.
हाँ 2018 लास्ट बताए हैं, देखिए क्या होता है.
पब्लिक को इस तरीके से यहाँ उलझाया गया कि ये झगड़ा कोई झगड़ा नहीं था. अगर सरकार चाहती तो अदालत के माध्यम से बहुत पहले इसका जो है फैसला कर दी होती.
And so, the self-appointed stakeholders who've been fighting each other in court joined ranks to bar the entry of another player. It's not just these contractors of religion who are blockading peace. The dispute has given birth to an industry.
As you make your way towards the temple, you come across shops like these, selling religious bric-a-brac, texts, pictures, idols, jewelry, and CDs like these, which tell the story of the Babri demolition in painstaking detail. It is in the interest of some to keep this memory, this cultural memory, alive in India.
The bylanes of Ayodhya are crammed with these symbols, an irrational hope that a temple will rid this town of all its woes and burnish its rusting face.
जब बन जाएगा तो ये जैसे इतने सन्नाटे दिख रहे हैं ऐसे सन्नाटे तो नहीं दिखेंगे रोडों पे.
अच्छा फिर क्या होगा?
हम लोगों के दुकानदारी का भी फायदा लाभ होगा. हाँ यात्री भी अधिक लोग आएंगे.
The Ramdhun plays constantly as you negotiate the narrow turns. The beads of prayer hang at storefronts, awaiting the faithful. The number of pilgrims is dropping, bemoan some. The temple will trigger the inflow of tourists, they vouch. Even the monkeys, the loyal soldiers of Sri Ram, the legendary avatar of Hanuman, are waiting for it, we're told. Not far from the famous Hanuman Gadi temple is the disputed site. Police barriers greet you every few meters. Our camera arouses suspicion. No further, they tell us.
About 300 meters from where I'm standing is the Ram Janmabhoomi, the place where Lord Ram is believed to have taken birth. It's a disputed site under lock and key. Worshippers do not have access to it. This is as far as security forces will allow you to go.
The security men will not speak on camera. It's a travesty, they say. In a land of 90 million Hindus, they don't have the freedom to build a temple at the birthplace of their biggest deity. Some historians dispute that this was the site. What was found in excavations were the remains of a Buddhist temple, they claim. People here disagree vehemently, though they have no proof of where Lord Ram was born. Keep faith away from history, they advise us. Who will build the temple, we ask.
जल्दी से जल्दी 6 महीना के भीतर मंदिर बनना शुरू हो जाए.
2018 लास्ट बताए हैं, देखिए क्या होता है।
हम उनको मना करने जाते हैं कि हम उनको रोकने जाते हैं, उनको मंदिर बनाना है बनावे, आज बनावे, अभी बनावे।
If everyone is on board, what's stopping them? Many point to the divide among the Muslim litigants. While the Shia Waqf board now agrees that building a temple at the Janmabhoomi is the best solution, the Sunni side bitterly opposes the idea.
इस विवाद को शांतिपूर्वक हल करने के लिए अयोध्या में जहाँ पे विवाद चल रहा है जिस संपत्ति को लेकर, वहां पर राम मंदिर बने, शिया वक्फ बोर्ड उस पे अपना जो अधिकार है या उस मस्जिद को लेकर जो अधिकार बनता था उसको समाप्त करता है।
Won't a temple be the harbinger of harmony? Won't it rob politicians of a time-tested instrument to polarize votes? Demolishing the mosque was wrong. So was the demolition of the temple, Hindu or Buddhist, that stood here before the mosque. Two wrongs don't make a right. And Ayodhya is tired of living in the past. If a temple means peace and progress in the future, this town wants it. The Muslims as much as the Hindus. Lord Ram, it seems, is caught in the Chakravyuh of politics, and this exile from his birthplace is turning to be much longer than what he suffered in the Ramayana.
Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh Yogi Adityanath organized a grand celebration this Diwali, the festival to mark the return of Lord Ram after 14 years of exile. And it is here, the place called Ram Ki Pedi, on the banks of the Saryu River, that 1.7 lakh diyas or lamps were lighted to mark the event.
It was as much to mark the end of the BJP's 15-year-long Vanvas or exile from power in Uttar Pradesh. Development projects to push growth in Ayodhya were promised. The celebration made a world record and more political ripples. The sun has set. Preparations for the evening prayers or the Aarti are underway at the ghats of the Saryu. As worshippers flock to the steps, smearing vermilion on stones, hope floats on the holy river. And the dream to see a temple for Ayodhya's most famous son.
करही परस्पर प्रीति, चलही स्वधर्म सुने सुख नीति, बैर निकल काहू सम कोई, राम प्रताप विस्मता कोई।
Very special broadcast from Israel. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay and I'm standing at Tel Aviv's historic Rabin Square. Over the next 30 minutes, we focus on the India-Israel relationship and how it's changing. 44 years after Israel came into existence, India finally established diplomatic ties with it. But the relationship has blossomed over the past 3 years. What was once described as a clandestine affair is now being called an open love. And the man behind the shift is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
In the year 2006, the then Chief Minister of Gujarat was not welcome in many Western countries. But when he travelled to Israel with Union Agriculture Minister Sharad Pawar, the red carpet was rolled out. Modi repaid the Israelis in kind. He opened the doors of his state for investment and technology cooperation to Israeli companies, laying the foundation of a relationship that would grow stronger in the years ahead.
He was our guest in 2006. At that time, of course, he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, and he came to the WATEC, which is the Water Exhibition of Israel, and he came along with Mr. Pawar, at that time the Agriculture Minister, and some other Chief Ministers from Rajasthan as well. And we escorted them through their visit to Israel and watching agriculture fields and technologies and so on. And he was fascinated by what Israel had to offer at that time. And Following this trip, many Israeli companies came to Gujarat and set shop, whether it's Netafim that expanded or at that time another company in the dairy sector. So Gujarat became a home for Israelis that wanted ease of doing business.
Businessmen from Israel foothold in India and being challenged by a different business culture and bureaucratic red tape found welcome change in Gujarat. The same year, another high-profile leader from India cancelled his visit. Then Defense Minister Pranab Mukherjee's planned trip to Israel was reportedly called off because of Israeli military operations in Gaza and the Lebanon war. A few years later, when Nitin Gadkari went to Israel as leader of the opposition, Prime Minister Netanyahu met him. It was an unusual gesture towards a man whose party was out of power for the second straight term. But it did not surprise observers. The BJP has consistently taken a pro-Israel line in its election manifestos. Narendra Modi took the first steps to concretize an old friendship, giving greater visibility to this relationship when he decided to meet Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in 2014, despite reported hesitation on the part of many in the Ministry of External Affairs. Since then, high-profile bilateral meetings and visits have grown. Last October, Pranab Mukherjee became the first Indian president to visit Israel. Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj was there this January to mark 25 years of diplomatic ties. She too has an old Israeli link. Swaraj earlier headed the India-Israel Parliamentary Friendship Group. In all, this is a team that Israelis share a rapport with. Prime Ministers Netanyahu and Modi are both seen as strong leaders, whose worldview finds convergence on many issues, and hence the strong foreign policy move to de-hyphenate Israel and Palestine.
The bedrock of the India-Israel relationship has always been defense. Even when the two countries did not have diplomatic ties, they were engaging on strategic issues. Here's a look at how India became Israel's biggest defense importer.
The year was 1971. At the helm of affairs in India and Israel, two strong women leaders, Indira Gandhi and Golda Meir. The Bangladesh crisis was unfolding. India required a type of heavy mortar to support operations of the Mukti Bahini.
Pour la rentrée, Vidéotron offre un forfait de 20 gigs pour seulement $55. Chiche.
On avait dit que s'il y avait une augmentation de cas, on mettrait en place un passeport vaccinal au Québec. Donc, je vous annonce aujourd'hui qu'on va mettre en place un passeport vaccinal. Christian Dubé, le ministre de la Santé, va dans les prochains jours annoncer les modalités du passeport vaccinal. Mais le principe derrière le passeport vaccinal, c'est que les personnes qui ont fait l'effort d'aller chercher leurs 2 doses doivent être capables de vivre une vie quasi normale. Doivent être capables d'avoir accès à toutes les activités, incluant des activités qu'on peut appeler non essentielles, comme d'aller dans un restaurant. Donc, oui, on va donner certains privilèges à ceux et celles qui ont accepté de faire l'effort d'aller chercher les 2 doses. Je pense que c'est un message important qu'on doit envoyer. On doit l'envoyer parce que les spécialistes sont tous clairs. Même avec le variant Delta, le vaccin, les vaccins sont efficaces. Actuellement, les personnes qui se retrouvent à l'hôpital sont en grande majorité des personnes qui n'ont pas été vaccinées. Justin disait tantôt, on est rendu au Québec à 83% des Québécois de plus de 12 ans qui ont eu une dose, puis 67% qui ont eu 2 doses. On pense qu'au cours des prochaines semaines, devrait se rapprocher du 80% 2 doses. Mais malheureusement, avec le variant Delta, qui est beaucoup plus contagieux, qui amène beaucoup plus de monde à l'hôpital, puis évidemment, il n'y a pas personne au Québec qui veut revivre ce qu'on a vécu au cours des dernières années, c'est-à-dire d'être obligé de reporter des chirurgies parce que nos hôpitaux sont engorgés. Donc, c'est important d'aller se faire vacciner. Un point aussi où je vais être très clair, parce qu'il y a des parents, des jeunes qui se posent la question, on maintient l'objectif que la rentrée dans les écoles, les cégeps, les universités soit faite en présence. Il y aura peut-être des mesures, on va là aussi les annoncer au cours des prochains jours, mais ça va se faire en présence. Même chose, je vois qu'il y a des gens des services de garderie, même chose pour les garderies. Donc, je vais être bien clair. Les personnes qui n'ont pas de problème spécifique où le vaccin pourrait leur nuire, vous vous mettez à risque de ne pas aller chercher tout de suite vos 2 doses de vaccin. Vous vous mettez à risque et vous mettez à risque l'ensemble de la société. Donc, si on ne veut pas
Why would I listen to a fucking goddamn word you say?
si on ne veut pas engorger nos hôpitaux, je vous le demande à tous les Québécois. C'est une question de solidarité.
I'm not Québécois, so it's fine.
Allez chercher vos 2 doses. C'est la meilleure façon d'être prudent et de mettre fin à cette pandémie. C'est ce que j'avais à vous dire sur la pandémie, mais mon collègue Christian Dubé, dans les prochains jours, va vous donner un peu plus de détails. Maintenant, je reviens à la bonne nouvelle du jour. Effectivement, je confirme qu'on a une entente avec le gouvernement fédéral qui va investir 6 milliards de dollars sur 5 ans, sans condition. Donc, ce que ça veut dire, c'est que le gouvernement du Québec va recevoir du financement pour continuer le développement du réseau. On a aussi une entente, j'espère, Justin, que ça, il y a une ligne où on dit, après 2026, ils vont continuer de nous aider à financer. Donc, ça, c'était important pour nous. Bon, évidemment, le Québec va continuer de financer la majeure partie des services de garde. Actuellement, on finance 2,7 milliards par année pour les services de garde. Je vous rappelle le chiffre, on soit 6 milliards sur 5 ans, mais on dépense déjà 2,7 milliards par année. Et donc, je suis très content. Puis je veux te dire merci. Tu parlais, Justin, d'une entente asymétrique. C'est une entente qui respecte les compétences du Québec, qui vient reconfirmer que les services de garde, les services éducatifs, ça relève exclusivement du gouvernement du Québec. Je pense que c'est une belle victoire.
Oh, my boy JT.
Québécois.
Let's
Maintenant, nous, de notre
hear you
côté,
rehearse your script
comme on
again.
l'avait promis, on va compléter ce réseau. Ça fait longtemps qu'on en parle. Il y a encore des parents au Québec qui n'ont pas de place. Et avec Mathieu Lacombe, on est en train de préparer une annonce pour la rentrée où on va s'assurer qu'il y aura une place de disponible pour chaque parent qui veut utiliser les services de garde. Donc, on est en train de le faire, là, municipalité par municipalité et région sous région par sous-région. Ce qu'on est en train de faire aussi, c'est important, je vous rappelle que dans la dernière négociation de convention collective, pour la première fois, c'est historique, on a donné des plus grosses augmentations de salaire aux enseignants, enseignantes et aussi aux préposés aux bénéficiaires. Là, on a vu le travail qu'ils font dans les CHSLD, entre autres. Actuellement, on est en égo. On a fait une offre pour les éducatrices dans les services de garde pour qu'il y ait des meilleures augmentations de salaire que l'ensemble des employés. Je pense que c'est important. C'est pour les tout-petits. Ces personnes-là travaillent pour ce qui est le plus important pour notre avenir, nos enfants. Je termine en vous disant, on peut être fier. Justin disait tantôt, on peut être fier de ce qu'on a fait au Québec avec les services de garde. D'abord, ça nous permet de mieux prendre soin de nos enfants et on a ajouté des services aussi, orthophonistes, orthopédagogues.
Can somebody just
Lionel
snipe this
Carman,
motherfucker?
Le ministre Lionel Carman aussi a mis en
Just
place
take the bitch out.
pour être capable de dépister plus tôt. Je me souviens quand j'ai eu des jeunes enfants, tout se joue avant 6 ans, ça veut dire que dès l'âge de 2 ans, 3 ans, on est capable de dépister les enfants qui vont avoir des difficultés, puis leur donner des services tout de suite. Donc, c'est un programme qu'on appelle Agir tôt. Justin parlait du tarif. Ben, on avait au Québec, malheureusement, un tarif qui n'était pas le même, dépendamment des revenus. On a corrigé ça. Actuellement, c'est 8,5 $, par jour pour tout le monde. Je pense qu'on peut être fier de ça aussi. Un service qui est abordable pour tout le monde. Je veux dire aussi un mot sur les maternelles 4 ans. Il ne faut pas voir ça comme étant en opposition avec les services de garde pour les enfants de 4 ans. Il y a des personnes qui aiment mieux les services de garde, entre autres, qui sont ouverts 12 mois par année, alors que les écoles sont ouvertes 10 mois par année. C'est sûr que dans les écoles, il y a des orthophonistes, orthopédagogues qui s'occupent de tout le primaire qui peuvent aider. Dans certaines garderies aussi, il y a des orthophonistes. Donc, les parents ont le choix. C'est ce qu'on souhaite qu'il y ait le choix entre des services de garderie qui incluent les services éducatifs et les maternelles 4 ans. L'autre chose aussi que je veux dire, et puis on en parlait tantôt, c'est qu'on peut être fier au Québec, au point de vue économique, des résultats des services de garde. Vous savez qu'en Amérique du Nord, on prend tous les États, toutes les provinces, c'est au Québec qu'on a le taux de participation le plus élevé pour les femmes. Dans tous les pays de l'OCDE, on est 2e. Donc, on peut être fier de ça. Ça permet aux parents, quand ils le choisissent, de retourner plus rapidement au travail. Donc, on peut être fier de ça. Donc, je termine en vous disant, oui, il reste du travail à faire. Oui, il y a des places qui manquent depuis plusieurs années. Mais avec Mathieu Lacombe, dès la rentrée, on va déposer un plan très clair, très détaillé, qui va donner accès à toutes les personnes, tous les parents qui veulent une place, vont avoir une place. Donc, je suis très fier, en conclusion, que le Québec serve de modèle à l'ensemble du Canada. Merci.
Oh, thank God. Fucking can't wait for you to not talk anymore.
Sur ça, je passe la parole au ministre Hussein, qui est ministre fédéral pour les familles.
Oh, Trudeau. Already out.
Merci, Premier ministre Trudeau. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est formidable d'être ici avec nos collègues.
Why are you so itchy?
Pour cette annonce. And Prime Minister, I know you've been working immensely hard across the country to make sure that we deliver on our childcare commitments. And I agree with you that this agreement is quite good. Et c'est parce que nous sommes là pour soutenir un système déjà rempli de succès. I think not only do we find in Quebec a willing partner, but also a partner that has really set the way for the rest of the country. And we're seeing the inspiration of the results across the country to work with them. I mean, let's just look at the numbers. The introduction of the childcare system in Quebec led to 70,000.
What a schmuck. Holy shit.
On a aidé Laurence à créer sa déco tendance.
Fucking go right your
confiance avec les experts de
for
Promaximo
you.
qui vous accompagnent en magasin, par clavardage et par téléphone. Et on vous propose la livraison gratuite. Pro Martino pour le meilleur et pour le prix.
Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. We actually got 2 members of Congress on, a Republican and a Democrat, who've been working together on some antitrust stuff. So that should be really interesting to dig into, to see what the possibilities are, if they're actually on the same page with regard to what they want to do. We got an update for you on Lincoln Project grifting, as well as some liberal mass hypocrisy, good old-fashioned stuff. Also, update on media misinformation and how the New York Times, Washington Post, and some of the most prominent outlets in the entire country have been hurting the case for vaccines dramatically. But we wanted to start with what is, frankly, in my opinion, one of the most shameful and unconscionable acts I have seen come out of DC in a long, long time. Okay, so here's the context. You all know that the CDC under the Trump administration, he pushed an eviction moratorium that expired over the weekend, okay? So the courts were uncomfortable with this moratorium for a while, and it actually went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court allowed it to stand, but said, listen, if you're gonna extend this any longer, you're gonna have to go through
You have to pass an act.
You got to go through Congress. It's basically Brett Kavanaugh who sort of pushed that idea of like, look, okay, we'll let you go this far, so July 31st, but if you're going to go through any further, you've got to go through Congress. Well, we've known that for a month. Has the Biden administration done anything? No, they have not. Nothing. So approximately 3 minutes before this thing was set to expire, they go to the House and say, oh, guys, the eviction moratorium, it's going to expire. And guess what? We've got 15 million Americans who are behind on who live in households that are behind on their rent. 4 million who say they might be in danger of getting evicted. We've got the Delta variant surging, and we'll get into more of that later in the show. Maybe y'all should do something about this eviction moratorium, okay? Let's throw this tear sheet from CNN up on the screen. Well, Democrats put up the most pathetic, perfunctory theater around attempting to pass this eviction moratorium. I got to read you this quote from Nancy Pelosi because this is insane. Basically, what happened is they went and asked for unanimous consent to pass this eviction moratorium. Of course, not a single Republican gives a shit that the eviction moratorium is ending. So immediately, one Republican says, no, I object to the unanimous consent vote, meaning I'm not going to let you do this just on a voice vote with everybody agreeing. And I said, oh, those bad old Republicans, they're standing in the way. Too bad, we're all going home on vacation. So here's what Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, said. She said, we only learned of this yesterday. There was not enough time to socialize it within our caucus as well as to build a consensus necessary. Okay, got that? First of all, shame on Joe Biden and his administration for not paying a lick of attention to this until it was way, way too late. Second of all, shame on all of these Democrats for also not paying a lick of attention to this. You didn't know there wasn't enough time? We have known that this was going to end.
For over a month, yeah.
We knew for over a month that the court said you had to do it through Congress. We've known since the beginning of the program that this is when it was set to end. What are you talking about? So just an unconscionable situation. They're trying to pretend like it's just the Republicans' fault, when the truth of the matter is, and we'll get to this in a moment, they're playing in Democrats who also don't want to extend this as well. You also have this rental assistance program that was passed, money was appropriated, has been a total failure in terms of getting the money out the door. I think we have a Washington Post tear sheet that shows just how pathetic a failure that program was, which we have known and covered for months now. This was not a secret. We have known this. About $50 billion has been appropriated. Only about $3 billion has gone out. According to this Washington Post report, they've been doing a good job tracking this. Just 36 out of more than 400 states and counties have spent even half of the money. New York State hasn't spent a penny, and they've gotten over $800 million just in the first round of funds that were appropriated. Total disaster that could have been averted. All the information you needed was there, and they just decided not to do it again.
Yeah, they did not. They only spent $3 billion out of the $25 billion that were appropriated for Congress in December. So that means over the last 6 months, they've spent $3 billion.
And there was a second round of appropriations in the Biden bill that brought the total up to $50 billion, and they've only spent $3 billion.
So think about that once again, which is that they're so terrible at this. They have the money, they just haven't been able to put it out. And while they were dithering, people were on the brink, and now they're facing eviction, and now they're saying that they can't even pass or an extension of the moratorium And once again, legally, it actually was pretty dicey for the CDC just to come in and like basically supersede all of housing law and be like, it's over. I think all of us are okay with that, and in a major situation. But the court stepped in and said, hey, look, like we're not saying this isn't a good idea, but Congress, you guys should probably step in and do something about it. And Pelosi's just completely lying. She says we only learned of this yesterday. How is that possible? Everybody has known that this was going to happen.
We knew about
This is the
it.
best. Right, so we knew about it, but apparently they didn't. And the best part is I want to explain a little bit more of the legislative mechanics. So whenever somebody objects to unanimous consent, it means they can't just pass it by a voice vote, right? So instead, what she's saying is, well, they're blaming the Republicans for one Republican, I guess, for objecting to the voice vote on the unanimous consent order, which only means that they would have to call a vote. And what she is saying is that they didn't want to call a vote. Now, implicitly, it could be that there were some Democrats who wanted to vote against it or would have voted for that extension. If that's the case, hey, let's learn who their names, right? Let's learn also all the Republicans. Everybody, make them vote. But this is how they hide behind legislative mechanics, by blaming somebody for objecting to the order than necessarily actually calling for a vote. They never even wanted to bring it to the floor. And I think that that's really what makes
And they're all in
it so
vacation now.
ridiculous. The best part is Pelosi's top lieutenant said, we'll revisit it after the break. Well, okay, right now it's actually pretty unclear how long that break is going to last. Could be a couple weeks, could be like 6 weeks. Now, 6 weeks from now, when people are evicted, what does it matter if you come in and you pass a renewed moratorium? Like, are you going to put people back in their house? How about maybe we punish these agencies or some of these other people and say, hey, like, why are you doing such a terrible job of distributing any of this money? I mean, if you were qualified for rent assistance, didn't get it, and are now going to be evicted, you have a pretty good case against the government that it's their fault for that you just got kicked out on your ass. I mean, what is happening here? It's a total breakdown of government, basically all the way up and down the chain. And look, I feel for, even people have contacted us about the smaller landlords and all those people, seriously, 100%. And that's why I supported this rental assistance thing. That's why the government should, step in, be like, look, it's a pandemic right now. Let's figure this thing out, pay that, and then we can settle debts later. But this is just pitting people against each other. The small landlord has no choice. The renter also doesn't have a choice. And then the government comes in, doesn't give the money, lets the thing expire, and just screws everybody. It's the worst situation all the way around.
Well, and here's what this all reveals too. All they ever cared about was the theater of it. All they ever cared about was having the talking point of, oh, look how much help we gave them. $50 billion in rental assistance went out the door. Aren't we so amazing? And, oh, we really tried to extend the eviction moratorium, but those bad old Republicans, they blocked it. You control the presidency, the Senate, and the House, okay? Yes, the Republicans suck. Not a single one of them cares about this at all. But you didn't even try. You didn't even try to have a voice vote. You waited until the last second. You want to pretend like, oh, who could have known that this was going to happen? Give me a break. This data, all of this data, we have covered every single piece of this data, from the number of people who were behind on the rent, to the fact that this assistance was not going out, to the fact that this eviction moratorium was set to end. And by the way, there were a lot of loopholes, even during the eviction moratorium, that allowed landlords to push people out. But it's about to be far, far worse. This is an absolute and complete disaster. And the design of that program was so flawed from the start because they pushed it to states and to local governments who were not set up for this. Some of them did a decent job. Some of them did a horrific job, and not a single dollar has gone out the door in so many jurisdictions across the country where you have people who were hurt by the pandemic, no fault of their own, who fully qualified for this assistance, and they are getting absolutely no help because the federal government kicked this down to the states and the localities and hoped that they would be able to effectively implement a program. We know how hard some of these states and municipalities have been hit as well, and how many things that they're struggling to keep up with. Some of them created this insane amount of paperwork that no one could possibly be able to get through. Some of them just weren't able to come up with a program whatsoever that worked at all, or contracted with other nonprofits in the local area that failed at their job. I mean, again, everyone knew this was going on and did nothing to stop it. So there is one group who seems to at least somewhat care. Cori Bush and other members of the squad, they have been camping out outside the Capitol to raise awareness demanding that their colleagues come back to try to pass an eviction moratorium. I want to give them credit for being seemingly the only ones who even care at all. But again, the question always is with them, what are you going to do about it? Okay, you're going to write a strongly worded letter again and have it ignored again? Or are you actually going to say, we are not voting for any of your priorities until we get an eviction moratorium. We're not voting for your stupid infrastructure bill. We're not voting for any of the must-pass legislation. Nothing. You will not have our vote until we get serious and pass an extension of the eviction moratorium. Are you going to do that? They aren't saying that so far, and there was a very disheartening exchange between Cori Bush, Congresswoman Bush, and Max Blumenthal, where he's trying to press her on how hard she's going to be willing to go here, given how not hard they've gone on in the past on any of these things. Let's take a listen to a bit of that exchange.
No. So first, one thing that was said last night, which is something that's very true, and I wish we would have talked about that this is where your conversation was going, because we're talking about the Rand report tonight. And I really would love to keep the conversation going with how I feel like it's all related to healthcare and that it absolutely is. But this is the thing. What was said last night is that this bill, Medicare for All, is not, there's no person on the squad whose bill that is. That is Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate. It is Camilla Jayapal's bill in the House. It is not our bill. We cannot make that bill come to the floor. There is nothing that we can do legally to get the bill to the floor.
Those things that brought the bill to the floor. Really good here. Thank you. I'm sorry, man. You're fine with this. Why can't you answer the question? We're talking about the but I feel like it's all about healthcare. Thank you.
So you could see her staff were the ones who said, or some staffers, organizers, whatever, stepped in there to shut the interview down.
They didn't like that she was actually getting pressed on how hard are you going to go, right? And Max is 100% right. Healthcare is very relevant to the conversation. We've also covered the data here about the way that evictions help to spread coronavirus, so entirely germane to the conversation. So germane to the conversation of like, look, you're out here, that's great. Like, that's awesome that you're actually willing to call some attention to this and be serious about this is a problem, it's something we care about. But don't pretend like you're impotent. Don't pretend like you have no power. Don't pretend like you can't, that you have no tools at your disposal to actually force some kind of action, some kind of flashpoint, some kind of fight. Like, don't pretend that you don't have that ability and are just choosing not to exercise it here. So, like I said, pretty disheartening exchange in terms of any sort of hope that these folks are going to really use the power that they have to get something done.
It's just really shocking from a coalitional point of view, because what the Tea Party did in 2010 and 2011 is they came in and they were like, okay, well, there's enough of us where we can block anything we want, and we actually will. And they made John Boehner's life hell. Complete hell on earth. They tanked multiple debt deals and whatever that the Obama administration had passed. They forced votes on like the debt ceiling. I'm not saying I agree with many of these things, but they did get it done. And they, frankly, had harder margins than the Democrats have right now. They only have 3 House vote majority. I'll give it to Congressman Ro Khanna, who we'll have on the show tomorrow. We're going to be talking to him a little bit. He actually is at least telling the truth about his own caucus in a more recent interview about this. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
A lot of people, millions of Americans potentially, are going to be upended when this moratorium lapses.
Joshua, I'm just going to be blunt. More than frustration, there is outrage at what happened today. Cori Bush, who has been unhoused, spoke so eloquently about why we need to extend the moratorium so people aren't this coming week, kicked out of their homes. Maxine Waters had a bill to extend it. We said we could extend it, if not to the end of the year, at least a few months. If the leadership has refused to bring it for a vote, and the reason they're not bringing it for a vote is that some Democrats privately have tried to kill this bill because of special interests of realtors and other groups.
That's
Lacey said it. Yeah, that's true.
Right there at the end. Some Democrats did not want to extend this moratorium because of pressure from special interests. And again, like you said, these small landlords, like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place too.
Yeah.
Like everybody has been failed by this. First and foremost, the tenants who are screwed and are facing eviction and all. There are a few things that are more traumatic and upending and create a downward spiral in someone's life than being unhoused, than not having a place to. You don't have an address. The instability. If you have kids, like it's one of the hardest things to be able to recover from. It can set people in a downward spiral. Remember, we also covered people who were living in this short-term stay motel who were living there essentially permanently. Many of them talked about how they had a home before the financial crash. And then once they lost that home, downward spiral. That's what millions of Americans are facing right now. And because these people only cared about the theater, only cared about having a talking point about how great and how generous they were and how effective they were. They didn't really care that the eviction
Everybody's love each other.
They didn't leverage any sort of serious political power to try to get anything done here. And now, this is where we are. It's very unlikely that they're going to get their act together to do anything. Everybody's home on break. There's a few squad members at the Capitol trying to raise awareness around this. Oh, and the latest, I forgot, the very latest development is now Nancy Pelosi and House leadership, Democratic House leadership, put out a statement saying, oh, actually, Biden administration, this is on you. We want you to have the CDC extend the eviction moratorium, which what would happen if they did that? Okay, they'd do it. It would immediately go to the courts. It's possible that you could have a sort of temporary stay and allow the moratorium to go forward while it's being settled in the courts. But ultimately, we know the Supreme Court is going to rule. So that's only a temporary fix at best. At worst, the courts immediately step in and say, no, you got to go through.
I think it should be through Congress. Why do we want these agencies coming in deciding how landlord housing law is being decided? This is their job, and instead they would rather be on vacation. Like, let that really sink in. They're all on vacation. They're all doing fundraisers. They're all out there. Some of them are maybe pretending to do some constituent meetings. But right now, in the mid-off-year election, this is prime money in the bank time. This is when you go home, you glad hand all the rich people in your district, you get the $2,500 checks, you rack it all up so that next year, whenever you're running, you don't have to do as much of it. This is like prime Congress thing. And so they'll never get
when all
this
the
time up.
Hamptons fundraisers
Exactly.
are,
So
all that stuff happens in August.
Everything's in August. They're all like flying all across the country, most of the time not even in their own district necessarily, raising this money. And while they're raising money, 15 million of basically the most vulnerable people in the country are getting completely screwed. And listen, these are the people least likely to be vaccinated. Also, if you take a look at the charts on who exactly is not getting the vaccine, so it's a health risk both to themselves but also to other people. These are also people. Look, I mean, I've talked about this. Once you're disconnected from institutions, it's over. I mean, in terms of trying to get somebody back from the brink, back into a house, it almost never works out that way. I'm not saying that
into any sort of normal.
It can happen on the margins, but in the aggregate, once you're out, it's out. You're out. And we found this out the hard way in 2008. Once you start losing bank accounts, connection to the financial system, connection to work, it's done. One of the things that you've been best have done, and we talked a lot about this at the beginning, we have a bottom-up economy, which is that all they had to do is put cash in people's hands, which we almost tried to do apparently with the rental assistance. Then the landlord gets paid. Then the landlord can pay his mortgage, so the bank gets paid. And that way, 10 years later, we don't have to bail out the bank. And now instead, looks like what's going to happen. Now the landlord's been screwed. These small landlords, they're totally hosed. So what are they going to do? They're probably almost going to they're either bankrupt, they might have default on their mortgage, may have to refinance, all that stuff. So those guys, enough of them go broke on something like this, then the bank is like, hey, Congress, we need you to bail us out. And now these people are homeless. It's like, what a stupid situation.
The other very clear impact here, too, will be the small landlords can't hold on. They lose their properties. Oh, guess who's there to sweep in?
Right.
You got BlackRock. You got these other financial giants who are dying to, buy up all of the single-family homes and other rental properties so they can be America's landlords. This just accelerates that process. No problem. Kick the tenants out. Landlords out, so you can own that property. And one more great American monopoly begins of these Financial behemoths being everyone's landlords.
It never needed to be this way, and now it is. And there's a lot of people's fault for that. And yes, there are many Republicans at fault. There's also, the White House is in charge here. There's all three branches of government, and not a lot is happening.
Feigned impotence.
Yeah.
Feigned impotence just enrages me so much. You control everything, and you're still pretending like you can do nothing. But one last thing I'll say on this is this also pairs with the fact that, housing prices have skyrocketed. And for a while, rents were staying pretty stagnant. Even some cities that were hard hit by COVID, rents had decreased. Well, those days are over. Rent is now skyrocketing as well. So if you are behind on your rent, you get evicted from your place, you're not going to be able to find another place. It's going to be really tough because those prices keep going up and up and up. So it is truly a dire situation, one that was entirely preventable. And one of the most shameful things I have ever seen out of Washington, and that is a pretty damn high bar.
Yeah.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it, you get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.
I would like to talk to you about an exciting opportunity. I just need 30 minutes of your time to explain it, but it has the potential to transform your life. I'm talking about multi-level marketing companies, or MLMs, companies like Mary Kay, Rodan & Fields, Nu Skin, Amway, and Herbalife. They sell different products, but generally MLMs have two main things in common. First, you don't see them on store shelves. You buy them through distributors like friends, family, and co-workers. And secondly, those distributors are always looking for more people to join them. And they have a pretty attractive message.
Why Herbalife? Because you get to be your own boss, earn extra money,
work from home, raise your own children.
You can name your own hours.
You make part-time or full-time money.
Paying the bills.
Share this video with 10 people that you care about, that you love, that you adore, that you admire. 20 people, 30 people. Come on, what are you waiting for? 100 people, share with everybody. They want what we have. We got it.
Okay, hold on. I'm supposed to share that with 10 people I love, adore, and admire. That's a tough ask. Let's see. There are the judges on this season of Project Runway. That's 3. There's Tim Gunn. That's obviously 4. If you count Tim Gunn twice, that's 5. But I'm still 5 short, and I am out now. And before you brush this industry off, you should know collectively it did around $36 billion in retail sales last year in the US. You probably know someone who is considering joining an MLM, or who already has and is posting about it 10 times a day on Facebook or Instagram. And if you do know someone like that, or have considered signing up yourself, this story is important. Because let me explain how the system is supposed to work. Generally, distributors have 2 main ways to make money. Sell the product itself, whether it's makeup, vitamins, or health shakes, and earn money on those sales. And this is key, recruit other people into the company and get money based on their sales and the sales of people they recruit in turn. Just look at Vima. A few years ago, a hidden camera caught a then distributor for that company, walking a prospective recruit through just how easy it can be.
Let's say you sign up 3 friends. Okay. So then you and I would help those 3 friends sign up their 3 friends and get their $700. Now it's 9 people there, right? Yeah. Then we help those 9 people sign up their 3 friends and they get $700. So everyone kind of gets their money back.
Wait, you kind of get your money back? That's as reassuring as hearing a doctor say he kind of knows where your appendix is. Well, it's probably somewhere near the spleen. And if you are thinking, well, hold on, that business structure sounds familiar. Isn't that a pyramid scheme? Well, there was a journalist waiting outside to ask the exact same question.
It's not an illegal pyramid scheme. It's a direct selling network marketing company.
Is it shaped like a pyramid, the business structure?
It's shaped like a pyramid, yes.
But you're saying it's not an illegal pyramid scheme?
It's not an illegal pyramid scheme.
Oh, I get it. So it's not a pyramid, it's just pyramid shaped. You know, like a Dorito, or an Angry Bird, or just a pile of bullshit. But let's put that pyramid question aside for a moment, because from the outside, these companies do have the trappings of legitimacy. Many have high-profile celebrity endorsers. Vima, had noted science expert Jenny McCarthy, Advocare has esteemed ball thrower Drew Brees, and an MLM called Max International had this guy.
After more than a year of due diligence, Gina and I joined Max International as home-based distributors and media spokespersons.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall while Gina and Chuck were poring over the numbers during that year-long due diligence session. Gina with an adding machine, Chuck randomly kicking stuff. It'd be like watching Lennon and McCartney write Sgt. Pepper. Still, for many MLMs, the biggest celebrity is their founder, who can enjoy cult-like status. Just look at J.R. Rydinger, CEO of Market America. At company conferences, the guy makes quite an entrance. Okay, fourth-string wedding chapel Elvis, calm the f*** down. And that's just his walk-on. Once he gets going, he puts on a real show, demonstrating how you can pump money, dramatising the rat race by sweatily running around in a giant wheel, and screaming at the gravestone of Joe Nobody, who never fulfilled his true potential.
Joe, come on, man. The dreams you told me about, we can actually do them now. We don't have to wait, man. It works. And I'm doing it, and I want to help you do it because it's so good. Joe, this is amazing. We can have vacations and sailboats, and we can have marble homes, and you can give your wife the jewelry that she deserves, man. You're going to be a hero. Come on, Joe, let's do it. Get up, Joe, get up. Before it's too late, get up.
Holy shit! All I can say is, thank goodness funerals don't have a speak now or forever hold your peace section. Because he would be at every cemetery delivering motivational speeches. She lived a good life. F*** you, your grandmother died a loser. Come back to life, Ethel. You can still have that yacht. Come back to life. And the dangling of vast lifestyle improvements is at the heart of the MLM pitch. Their materials feature flashy cars and luxury travel that you can achieve. And just watch a distributor from Longevity walk you through a future dream scenario in exquisite detail.
In 2 years, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to drive to your work. You're going to walk into your boss's office. You're going to sit down, and you're going to quit your job. You're going to explain that little pyramid scheme thing that you almost got terminated for last year, you're now an entrepreneur and you're going to be doing that full time.
Whoa, back up. Did you just say pyramid scheme and then almost got terminated?
And then you're going to go out to the parking lot, you're going to get into your silver Mercedes that Longevity has paid for, and you're going to drive home. Oh, no, wait, actually, first you're going to drive to the bank.
I'm sorry, I hate to dwell on this, but you definitely said pyramid scheme back then. But I'm sorry, now we're suddenly going to the bank.
And you're going to walk into the bank, and you're going to deposit your coding bonus. And the lady's going to say, will that be checking or savings? And you're going to say, yeah, I don't really care. I get these all the time.
And then the lady's going to say, that's fantastic, but I actually need to know which account this goes into. And you're going to say, makes no difference to me. And she's going to say, but I can't deposit this unless you specify which account it's policy. And you're going to say, it's all gravy. And she's going to say, how about checking? And you're going to say, I'm loving it. And she's going to say, do I need to get security? And you're going to say, the account ending in 8424, please. Now, Longevity told us that woman's claims are not authorised by the company and are against Longevity policy, which forbids income claims. Although, that video was taken at one of their official events, and the woman, Denise Chenault, is featured with her husband on the company website with the words, Denise and Tom Chenault are Longevity. Now, come on! You don't let someone embody your company if you don't agree with them. If Flo turned out to run a dogfighting ring, Progressive would wipe her off their website immediately, and by the way, you know that's coming, you can see it in her eyes. There are dead dogs dancing in there. But you cannot deny the picture that she paints is enticing. Who doesn't want to tell their boss to go f themselves? Half my staff would do it right now if they could. But MLMs hold out the hope that if you work hard, you can take control of your life, start your own business, and help your family. But how real is the opportunity? Well, let's take a look at just one of these companies in depth, Herbalife. You saw its pitch earlier. It was the one you were supposed to send to 10, 20, 100 people. It sells nutritional supplements like shakes and vitamins, and it's one of the biggest MLMs around, with net sales of $4.5 billion last year. It has celebrities who talk up its benefits, from superstar athletes like Cristiano Ronaldo to pretty much the last person you're expecting to see in this piece.
Well, first of all, you have a great product. That makes all the difference.
We don't care about your product.
Well, I am a product of product. It has every combination of things that I like. It's a very good product, delivered by really good people.
Yes, that is Madeleine Albright talking to Herbalife CEO, claiming she's a product of the product. So forget studying at Columbia and Johns Hopkins. If you want to be like the first female Secretary of State, just chug a couple of vanilla-adjacent Nutri-Shakes a day and thank her in the morning. Oh, and about those products. In its early days, Herbalife was accused of overstating their health benefits, claiming in the 80s that one product helped relieve everything from venereal disease to tumours to bedwetting. And back then, their founder, Mark Hughes, was asked by a Senate subcommittee to answer experts who'd called his diet products into question. And this was his response.
I think if they're so expert in weight loss, why were they so fat yesterday? It seems to me, and I'm not trying to make any jokes, but I do think that they ought to use our product.
First, he seems great. But second, why would anyone in the 80s take Herbalife to lose weight? They had cocaine. Come to think of it, we also have cocaine. The point is, cocaine is an effective weight loss option. It's not where I thought I was going with this, but it is where we have ended up. Now, to be fair, that was 30 years ago, and a lot has changed in the company since then. Although, when ABC News filmed some Herbalife distributors just 2 years ago, they found some claims that seem to echo the company's past.
This Herbalife distributor in New York City told us the story of a woman who overcame an inoperable brain tumor thanks to Herbalife. New recruits were told Herbalife products help to treat heart disease.
24 years ago, I had early congestive heart failure. Nothing more.
Even helped one woman get pregnant.
I'm 40 years old. I'm my fourth pregnant.
Well, that is obviously bullshit. Nutrition shakes cannot help you get pregnant. There are only 3 liquids that can do that. A glass of Merlot, the honey smooth music of Sade, and good old-fashioned jeans. And people might be making claims like that because they are desperate to move excess product. You see, broadly speaking, under Herbalife system, distributors can get bonuses and massive discounts on products based on how much they buy, which can be a huge incentive to buy in bulk. For instance, let's say you're selling Herbalife's disgusting creamy chicken soup powder for $13.35 a box. The cheaper you can buy it from Herbalife, the more profit you could make. But to stay qualified for those higher discounts, you have to keep buying product. And it might not be easy to sell that extra soup because A, it's a little pricey, and B, we actually tried it, and it tastes like the wood shavings inside a gerbil cage. And as one former top distributor will tell you, if you are just accumulating product, that can lead to a problem common enough to have a special name.
We call it garage qualified. They would stack as much product as they can in their garage, and at some point they would realize that they have to quit.
So people buy product more than they can sell. It sits in a garage. What happens? There's got to be an end point here at some point.
When they run out of money, there's an end point.
Exactly. So Herbalife may be an industry leader in worthless crap people stick in their garage, along with, of course, the PT Cruiser. The car that looks like a sporty version of a Hertz. And as a distributor, it is not easy to figure out exactly how you are going to make money. Just watch this Herbalife video from a few years ago explaining one narrow part of their insanely convoluted compensation plan.
Okay, here we go. Take a look at this example. Now, when E places a 4,000 volume point order at 42%, this counts as personal volume for you. But Since this qualifies E to supervisor with a 1-month qualification, that volume now becomes encumbered for everyone in the upline. And remember, each upline distributor needs to accumulate 1,000 unencumbered volume points if they want to qualify for supervisor as well.
It's simple. And if you accumulate 10,000 unencumbered volume points, those are grouped into an unencumbered batch, which qualifies Benedict Cumberbatch for one unencumbered cucumber cummerbund. And while yes, that is absolute nonsense, it makes exactly as much sense as everything that came before it. In fact, to hear another former Herbalife distributor tell it, your main focus in the business might be less on products than on the people below you.
You don't make money from selling products. You make a little, not much, not enough to pay the bills that are racking up. You make money from signing people up.
Of course. It's like that famous salesmanship motto from Glengarry Glen Ross. ABSTCOSTOS. Always be selling the concept of selling to other salespeople. And at this point, that pyramid scheme question that we set aside earlier has to be addressed. Because in broad terms, if distributors' earnings come primarily from selling products to actual customers outside of the company, that is probably a legitimate business. But if those earnings come primarily from selling product to the distributors you've recruited below you, and their sales of product to the distributors they've recruited below them, all within the company, that may be a pyramid scheme. And any business that is set up that way has a big problem for a reason that, and I will warn you, does involve math.
Almost all of these schemes tell you that you can make money by just recruiting 3 or 4 or 5, let's say, 5. Then you let the 5 do their 5. That gives you 25. What they don't show you is that you could only do that 13 cycles, and you would exceed the population of the Earth.
It's true. Within 14 cycles, you run out of people. And that is assuming that everyone on Earth wants to be a protein shake distributor. And I can think of at least a few people who have better things to do. Alan Alda, for instance, or Malala Yousafzai, or Morton Harkett, lead singer of a-ha. The guy is still swimming in Take On Me money. He doesn't need this shit. And Herbalife CEO, Michael Johnson, has an interesting way of deflecting that whole pyramid scheme question.
I go back to any company. I started in Disney as a director, and then I went to be executive vice president and president of the international entity of the company. So I moved up 6 or 7 levels. And at the top was sitting the CEO of the company, Michael Eisner. Is that a pyramid? Is that any different than what we're doing here?
Yes! It is completely different. Disney was a corporate ladder. Those were all salaried positions with benefits. The company wasn't banking on you personally filling your garage with cases of unsold DVDs of The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. But Johnson could have made a stronger non-pyramid case in that interview if he could have just shown how much money distributors get from selling product to actual retail customers. But conveniently, Herbalife didn't keep records of those figures. Now, unfortunately for them, the FTC recently finished a multi-year investigation into the company and filed a blistering complaint, walking right up to the line of outright calling it a pyramid scheme. They alleged Herbalife's compensation program doesn't incentivize retail sales, but rather the recruiting of additional participants who fuel the enterprise by making wholesale purchases of product, which sounds like, you know, how pyramid schemes work. And when people pointed this out, the FTC chair made an amazing statement.
So what you're saying is that this company has all the hallmarks from pyramid schemes, isn't that right?
You know, our focus isn't on the label. The word pyramid does not appear in our complaint. That is true. They were not determined not to have been a pyramid.
Think about what she just said there. Not determined not to be a pyramid. How is that not a huge warning sign? If the FDA announced, we have not determined cotton candy not to be clown pubes, you would never risk eating that shit ever again. Now, who knows why the FTC stopped short? Perhaps it ensured Herbalife agreed to a settlement in which they neither admitted nor denied wrongdoing, but did pay $200 million and agree to significant new changes. But the contents of this complaint are mind-blowing. The FTC claims that the overwhelming majority of Herbalife distributors who
Hang on.
pursue the business opportunity make little.
Okay. What's up? Yeah. What's up? I'm at home. No, cleaning? Yeah. Something's grinding. Yeah. And I can't really put it in reverse either. What? Yeah. Like not drivable grinding. Like I can move it, but you can't drive it. Give me a little bit. Like I just need to do some dishes. I'm always doing dishes. I'm always cleaning. Well, it doesn't sound like you're about to get up and run out into the car anyway. Okay, if you want to come now, then just come now. Yeah. I guess.
It don't sound like a lot of stay there or what?
Yeah, I'd love to stay here and clean.
Guess you want me to come now or what?
Give me like 20 minutes or something. Like. Okay. Right. Jesus fucking Christ. It's like a fucking 3-hour-long conversation.
For no money.
For like we
And they-
spent 10 fucking minutes.
Most Canadians spend on average 55 cents a day on bank fees. That's over $200 a year and around $10,000 in a lifetime. That's real money. That used to be your money. Tangerine Free Daily Bank Account. Find out how to get this great offer when you become a new client.
From my perspective, we've learned a lot in a year and a half about how to protect ourselves and others from COVID-19.
Despite concerns about the fourth wave of COVID and the Delta variant, the health minister isn't expressing any concerns about safety of holding a federal election. While the formal call has still yet to be made, new polling shows the Liberals in a strong lead.
Whenever an election arises, we'll be talking about what Canadians hope for their country and the plans that the Liberal Party is putting forward.
New polls from both Leger and Nana's research show Justin Trudeau as the top choice for PM and the Liberals as most likely to form the next government. McGill University's Daniel Bellon says that's unsurprising given the strong support Trudeau enjoys in Quebec and his ability to shake off scandals like the We Charity Student Services grant. But Bellon says a resurgent Bloc Québécois means Quebec's 78 seats could play a major role, as any Bloc gains will likely come at the expense of the Liberals or Tories.
So the NDP only have one seat left, and they are unlikely to pick up other seats or a significant number of seats in Quebec. The Conservatives, yeah. When you ask people who will be the best Prime Minister, Jagmeet Singh and Erin O'Toole in Quebec only get
not Jagmeet Singh.
Bellon also highlighted the personal unpopularity of Erin O'Toole, who was already the target of a new attack ad from Unifor.
New name, same old conservative.
Bellon says O'Toole will be fighting uphill.
Why the fuck
personally
are we talking
unpopular
about
in
fucking
Canada's
Harper?
most populous
Please.
provinces, as well as
God, you guys are so fucking dumb. It's unbelievable. You would think you're Americans.
In the coming weeks that are getting their second dose. We need to get vaccinated to get through this.
Shut up. You are fucking useless human being.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. We got some big updates for you on Governor Cuomo. We'll start the show with that in just a moment. Biden's about face on the eviction moratorium. We'll tell you what you need to know there. The NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, has ruled that Amazon did, in fact, violate labor law in that Bessemer Union election. We'll give you the details there. Turns out Democrats pretty worried about midterms.
Really bad.
Really bad numbers that they are admitting to, that they need a dramatic turnabout if they're going to have any shot at holding the House. In some ways, that chance may have already expired. We also have the great Jeff Stein on to talk about all of the things that are happening in Washington, from housing and the eviction moratorium to the infrastructure bill to the reconciliation bill. Going to get updates from him on all of that. But we do want to start with all the details of exactly what a scumbag Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York is. Of course, we've been covering for a long time all of the many scandals that he has been enmeshed in. Now, personally, I would argue that basically allowing elderly people to die in nursing homes, covering that up, giving VIP treatment to his brother and a ton of other people, using state resources to write his multi-million-dollar book, I would say that that was already enough.
That was enough to
get rid of this
and
guy.
Have him go on his own.
Yes,
Yeah.
but now we also know new details from an investigation by Democratic Attorney General Letitia James, just what a jerk and a scumbag and a bully and a disgusting sex pest he was, allegedly, in terms of his operation within his office. Let's take a listen to a little bit of what she had to say.
Governor Cuomo sexually harassed current and former state employees in violation of both federal and state laws. The independent investigation found that Governor Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women, many of whom were young women, by engaging in unwanted groping, kisses, hugging, and by making inappropriate comments. Further, the governor and his senior team took actions to retaliate against at least one former employee for coming forward with her story.
So there was a lot we learned in this report. We're going to get to Cuomo's defense in a moment. Basically, he's like, I'm Italian, I'm friendly, I do this with everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, some of this goes way beyond being a little overly friendly or touchy with people. This includes feeling women up under their blouse. This includes a state trooper. You really caught your eye.
I went through, I read the entire thing. This one really pissed me off. I actually tweeted about it. I rarely tweet. That's how mad I was. So I put it up there. Cuomo arranged the transfer of a female state trooper to his protection detail that he found attractive, and then sexually harassed her constantly, repeatedly, including unwanted kissing, being like, do you want to come upstairs? And you can actually see there on the left side in that first graphic that she did not even technically qualify to be on the protective unit for the governor. But he and his staff, like, he saw her, apparently was attracted to her, arranged her transfer onto his protective detail. Then she was the only woman and she didn't know what to do. And she was constantly being harassed by the governor, and she would go to her colleagues and be like, what do I do? And they're like, yeah, I don't know. This is really gross. They even started to all make a joke about how they should try and keep her away from the governor, or who are they really protecting? Really, really disgusting stuff.
Yeah.
I think that one is the most egregious, like in my opinion.
And this was a pattern, though.
Yes.
He would find these women, he would intentionally pull them into some position where he was going to have access to them. And then, I mean, this really, it is actually consistent with all the other power abuses that we talk about, because this is just classic abuse of power. I'm going to do it because I can, and there's really nothing you can do about it. And he would use the fact that he had all these women in his office and had elevated all these women into senior positions that he found attractive. He would use that to paint himself as some great feminist the whole time. Meanwhile, this is the reality of what's going on. Putting women, who really, some of them really like their job, really care about their job. The state trooper in particular, she's elevated to this high level beyond, really where her experience would have ultimately put her. She thinks this is a great opportunity. And then she's in this awkward position because what do you do when the governor asks you for a kiss? You don't want to lose the job. You don't want to piss him off. You don't just have no idea how to handle it. So that's the type of behavior that we're talking about here. And if it was one woman, if it was two women, you might be able to say, it's a misunderstanding. They interpreted it the wrong way. He's just overly friendly. We're talking about 11 women here, just that they spoke to in this report, including 9 current and former employees. That is a direct violation of both state and federal law. Really just gross and indefensible.
No, that is exactly what it is. And you see this with his assistants, with many of these lower women who were working for him, most of them who were young, and all of them describe the same pattern of inappropriate comments, escalating to physical contact, escalating to being creepy within private areas, especially within the governor's mansion. They describe a culture there in which it was common for them to like sit on his lap, or like seniors, junior and senior. I mean, look, it was, and that's what they said, is that it doesn't come out of a vacuum. So there was all this permissible kissing and sitting on his lap in the behavior which was encouraged by the governor, specifically in order to normalize his own behavior here. And as you said, I think what's actually more disgusting is his response. He's basically saying that all these people are liars, and okay, you have to go ahead and prove it. But even worse, he's saying if there was any misunderstanding, it's because I'm Italian. Just look at what he said in response to all of this.
I do it with everyone. Black and white, young and old, straight, LGBTQ, powerful people, friends, strangers, people who I meet on the street.
Like, so he holds, holding the chin of a boy is not the same thing. He goes, I do it with everybody. I mean, first of all, that's not cool. As we didn't have that.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, that one photo that came out months ago of him like with a young girl at a wedding reception.
Yeah,
like,
her face
grabbed
like,
her face. She's like, please, don't. She's like, don't touch me, creepy old man. It's like, yeah, first of all, maybe don't. Second, pretty actually racist against other Italians. We're saying, all of that. Actually, we're all constantly sexual. Like, dude, I've been to Italy. Like, I'm pretty sure people don't behave that way.
I'm glad someone here standing up for Italians.
I stand up for them. I spent time in New York. I know some New York Italian people. They don't act this way. Why can't you get your act together. So that's the way that his response has been. But even worse was this particular. We're trying to normalize his behavior of touching and kissing, he says. He put a slideshow together of other politicians hugging people, and he has the gall, for those who are just listening, he includes photos, which we have here up on the screen, of George W. Bush and Barack Obama hugging hurricane victims. The hubris and I don't even know what to call it, to compare Barack Obama and George W. Bush hugging victims of hurricanes who lost their family members and their homes to you and your creepy behavior of young women on your staff who you have power over. There are no words for what that even describes.
Yeah.
Of like, what? Who does that? It's like, what is wrong with you?
Comparing that to him literally grabbing titties and ass. That's the comparison he's trying to make here, and like those two things are equivalent, allegedly. I mean, it really, really is something. I mean, his response, 85 pages long, and the majority of it was just a bunch of pictures of him like embracing the president's embracing people and all of that. Another thing that's in this report, which is also really disturbing, which we kind of saw in real time, is Lindsey Boylan, one of his accusers. They went to all these aggressive lengths to smear her and her reputation, leaking confidential personnel files to the press in an attempt to smear her. Cuomo apparently drafted some like really nasty op-ed revealing some of those details himself, and then that was ultimately quashed. But you can see the way that his aides collaborated with him in this entire orchestrated effort to try to smear the reputation of at least Lindsey Boylan, potentially many others. I will say that, this behavior is disgusting, and on its own, you should not be in this kind of position of power when this is how you view and treat people, period, full stop. It is interesting that this is the trigger for people. We're about to say, like, now the bottom has fallen out. Assembly Speaker has said basically that, impeachment's going to move forward. He says they've lost the confidence of the Assembly Democratic majority. He can no longer remain in office. That's the first time that the Assembly Speaker, who I believe has been an ally of Cuomo, has come out that forcefully. So impeachment likely moving forward. Apparently it's going to take about another month to finish the impeachment investigation and draft articles of impeachment. That's kind of Cuomo's last lifeline, as he's hoping in that month that things kind of die down again and the public just forgets all of this and only remembers what he did when they loved him during the coronavirus. Joe Biden, who had previously said, hey, let's let the investigation play out. He and Cuomo have been close for a very long time. Cuomo was at Cuomo's funeral. Biden spoke at his nominating convention for governor. They've been friends and allies for a very long time. So Biden now officially calling for Cuomo to step down amid these revelations. I just do think it's interesting that apparently the nursing home, totally corrupt dealings with nursing homes to start with, like the nursing home lobby basically writing the immunity shield law that Cuomo pushed, that Republicans then picked up. You also had the fact that he had this policy in place that required nursing homes to take back in people who had been infected with coronavirus, leading to thousands and thousands of deaths in nursing homes. Then there's a cover-up of those numbers that is well documented at this point. Not only the nursing home numbers, but now we're learning apparently he downplayed the numbers overall of coronavirus, the very thing that Trump and DeSantis were accused of. He really, it appears, engaged in. That's horrific. You have the fact that he gave VIP treatment to his brother and a bunch of other friends and family at the beginning of COVID when nobody could get tests. They were getting VIP service, concierge service with their tests. You have allegations that he abused state resources in writing his book. None of that was enough. There are 5 different things there. Each one of them should have been enough to say, this guy can't hold power anymore. But they held on it until now before the bottom really fell out.
All of those were enough at the time. We knew everything we needed to know to get rid of Cuomo back in May of 2020, which we have documented many times both on Rising and on the show, regarding the nursing home order, the immunity shield. Assemblyman Ron Kim, who we had on our show multiple times, had been calling this out, and nobody wanted to listen because of Trump. He was the useful counter to Trump.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely on our reactions to each other's monologues. So get to listen to it, get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. The link is right there in the description or at franklinvoice.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to mainstream media.
Good evening and welcome to Gravitas and Palki Sharma of Wagner Lessons. Earlier this week, we ran a report on Wuhan virus resurgence. Cases were on the rise in London. Our India was racing for the third wave. With treating infections for 78 days. A lot of you wrote to us about the lasting impact of the wave, about how people had so much to be recovered. Now, what we know is we have people complaining about persistent symptoms, headaches, weakness, brain fog, erratic heartbeat. It appears that this is more common than we imagined. We spoke to doctors, we started gathering data. Turns out millions of people are suffering, even after they technically recovered from the Wuhan virus. It's not clear if they'll ever fully recover. Some governments are looking to classify them as disabled. Tonight we bring you the trends and the highlights. What is it like to live with long COVID? Is it a disability? Does medical science have solutions? Have we been able to define the problem? If you've recovered from COVID, it's a report that you must watch. Also on the show, agony ecstasy epidemic, one by spread the ounces and heart rates, so that you have 1 million people celebrate happiness. In Afghanistan, the Taliban say they were the non-Islamic blasts. Also offer the same blasts, but the missions of Christ. In Pakistan, after selling luxury cars to buffaloes, President Prime Minister President's comfort rent in 2021. And in China, latest victim of the government's tech crackdown is online gaming company Debbie Brandon's peddlers as spiritually free. Here's always
As the Afghan security situation worsens, the Taliban have claimed responsibility for attacking the home of acting defense minister Ismail Mahdi and with an equal threat to hold Mohammadi survived the attack on his hometown. Turkish security forces have detained around 300 migrants, mostly Afghans. Migrants were trying to cross into Turkey from the Iranian border in a search of guidance between the Afghan government and the Taliban. India's first indigenous aircraft carrier, INS Vikrant, has sailed out the sea trials. India's defense minister tweeted calling the grant a true testimony to the country's unwavering commitment to sovereign physical defense. Amid the growing hunger crisis in Tigray, the United Nations humanitarian chief has said 100 trucks per day will be meeting humanitarian needs of the people in the region. According to UN figures, over 90% of Tigray's population is in dire need of emergency food aid. A police officer died and several people were injured after a shooting incident at the Pentagon under a temporary lockdown on Tuesday. The suspect in the incident was shot dead by the law enforcement officer on the site. Malaysia's embattled Prime Minister Najib Singh has refused to resign after a key ally pulled support. Najib said he will seek a vote of confidence in Parliament next month to prove his legitimacy to govern. A year since one of the biggest non-nuclear explosions in history left the last remains of Beirut to 18 people. Its judicial inquiry faces a crucial milestone after the Parliament votes to allow Christian lawmakers. The Dominican Republic will send tens of thousands of pigs after the tempting outbreaks of African swine fever in 11 of the 22 provinces. According to reports, government will pay pig farmers the market price for each government slaughtered. Wrestler Ravikant Dahiya has assured India of the fourth medal at the Tokyo Olympics, storming into the final of the men's 57-kilogram category. Dahiya, who is through his opening 2 rounds and then opened a sensational 2-9 deficit in the semi-final, by pinning his Kazakh opponent, Nursultan Saliyev. He is only the second Indian wrestler to reach an Olympic final and looking to become the India's second Indian gold medalist after Abhinav Bindra. Canada's Andre Cross has ended a long run of finishing with 1 medals by winning the Olympic men's 200 gold. 26-year-old Lorraine, 2 American rivals from the bench have found an 8th year right to the end to serve the gold in a scorching time of 15.62 seconds. Reigning world champion and 3 tournament favorite Noah Lyles is put to the silver medal by his American teammate Katie Bednarik at 19.68 seconds.
Were you infected by the Wuhan virus? Do you still feel sick? Are you breathless? Do you feel a pain in your chest sometimes? Do you find it hard to concentrate? Are you losing hair? And most importantly, are you showing all of these symptoms several weeks after your diagnosis? If your answer is yes, chances are you have what's called long COVID, a condition that has been now classified as a disadvantage disability. People with persistent symptoms of COVID are seen as disabled by some governments. How serious is this condition? How widespread? I'll show you one example. American actress Alyssa Milano, she had COVID. She managed to overcome the fever, the headaches, the loss of stability, she was breathless. The ordeal was just beginning. Last day, after recovering from the infection, she reported a baby. She showed a virus in her body. What's this information there?
COVID. This is a deterioration of the brush. As you can see in there, there's no hair in there. One brushing. This is my hair loss from COVID-19. Wear a damn mask.
It's not a beauty problem. This is a health issue. Doctors face what they call shock hair loss. The virus places so much stress on our body, mind, and immune system that your hair begins to fall off. And that's just one possible symptom of long COVID. This is a long list. Fatigue, shortness of breath, cough, joint pain, chest pain, memory, concentration, or sleep problems, muscle pain or headache, fast and heartbeat, loss of smell or taste, dizziness. There could be more than 200 symptoms in all. That's what recent study found. That's what COVID long haulers are suffering from. They're living with these symptoms. That's how I told you about these people right tonight. Because we're talking about another grade, we're looking at other cases. We haven't seen many of you who have tested negative now, but haven't fully recovered. And we want you to know it's not normal. There are a lot of people who survive the virus, but still struggling, still suffering. This is a silent pandemic. There are millions of patients who die from this. We underwent treatment. There are people who test came back negative. There are no longer, they are no longer good patients. But they haven't fully recovered. And all give you on this journey to restore their health. What is the scale of this crisis? It's massive. Consider some of these numbers. A study in the United States has found that nearly 25% of Wuhan virus patients still feel sick. After their initial diagnosis, they're suffering from breathing difficulties, high blood pressure, high levels of cholesterol, and fatigue. The United States has reported more than 46 million confirmed cases. With the same trend holds. Close to 9 million Americans could be suffering from long COVID. Many of the United Kingdom, a study found that more than 2 million people in England may have had long-lasting symptoms. After they were infected by the Wuhan virus, the crisis is so big. The government has set aside more than $60 million for research on long COVID. What about India? Some estimates were published last month. 40 to 60% of hospitalized Wuhan virus patients in India suffer from ongoing symptoms for up to 12 weeks. Out of these, 10 to 15% patients suffer more. They suffer with symptoms for more than 3 months. They complain about the mechanisms, choice case, really strong, the United States, the United Kingdom, and India, these are among the worst affected countries in the world. And these are just 3 countries, long-term and affected people across the globe. And if you're one of them, what should you be doing? At what point should you escalate the matter to your doctor? Are you going to live with these symptoms forever? Will they ease with time? Let us like to know that your case is not unique. Dr. Solutions, he has reported more than 150 million. He's also treating patients with long COVID. He shared some anecdotal evidence with us. Dr. Gordon said 1 out of 20 patients are coming back more care, 1 out of 10. Even after they're tested negative, even after diagnosis, their symptoms range from mild to severe. Some of them are also reported cardiac issues.
It's difficult to estimate how many people what the effects of COVID It's probably around 1 in 20. And those symptoms can be mild to very severe debilitating. I think the people we've looked at, mostly colleagues of ours who have gone off work, so we knew before, we knew how they were physically and psychologically, and we can see that some people generally are still very sick, and unfortunately, over a year later, have been unable to come back to work. The main areas of long COVID has caused probably general symptoms, so feeling unwell, feeling tired, weakness, and then, as you'd expect from illness that affects the respiratory tract of the lungs, people develop cough and breathlessness that can be a problem. And you find out problems sort of fast heart rates, tightness in the chest, and joint pains. It's really the things we're seeing, and that's away from the psychological manifestations of the illness.
Respiratory illness, cardiac illness, psychological issues, the virus is reaching no part of the body untouched. Do we have a cure for the local illness? Is there any treatment available? The answer is no. Right now, there is no specific treatment for patients with long COVID. Doctors are only treating the symptoms as they come. So when the patient complains of breathlessness, they treat that. When someone has cardiac issues, they treat that too. Some patients recover. What should you do if you have recovered from Wuhan virus but are still suffering? Anything designed to the idea that they will suffer for life. The symptoms will never be relieved them. Even governments and policymakers seem to be of this view. They're looking at disability benefits for patients with long COVID. The United States was the first to move in this direction. The government published guidance last week to recognize these patients with long COVID as disabled. It said they should qualify for disability benefits. What kind of patients are we talking about? Those who are still suffering from symptoms like fatigue, brain fog, difficulty breathing, heart palpitations, chest pain, loss of taste or smell, joint or muscle pain. Wuhan virus has infected more than 200 million people the world over. It is killing more than 4 million people, but those who have survived are still struggling. There's no science behind these things. Not even an entire generation of COVID survivors with disabilities. From inspiring tales, let's shift to the sobering realities of world politics. The Afghan capital was attacked last night. Car bomb explosion ripped through the green zone. Targets in Afghanistan's defense minister. The attack was with the Taliban. 8 people lost their lives, 20 others were wounded. This is a brazen escalation by the Taliban. The first major attack on Kabul, and that in the green zone. Let me also tell you why this location is important. The green zone is a heavily fortified area. All the ministries and embassies are located in the green zone, along with 8 groups in media houses. The green zone, you could say, is the power center in Kabul. But that did not stop the Taliban. Using the cover of the night, they detonated a car bomb. They wanted to kill Defense Minister Bismillah Mohammadi. Thankfully, he and his family escaped. He later went on national television to assure the people that he was fine. What about the terrorists who perpetrated the attack? The Afghan government says there were 4 of them. After 5 hours of gunfighting, all of them were neutralized. This is the group that wants to rule Afghanistan, that calls itself the government in waiting. They attacked their own people in the dark of the night, ended up killing 8 civilians. Is this the new Taliban, the Taliban 2.0 that Pakistan keeps talking about? Look at the damage they have caused. There's debris all over the streets. Entire buildings have been destroyed. What part of this screams nation building? How does this destruction lead to stability? Our correspondent Anas Malik was in Kabul during the explosions last night. He could hear the blasts and the gunfight behind him. They sent us this report from the attack site.
I'm standing at the incident site of the Kabul blast that took place that literally shook Kabul last night. This is the house of the Afghan Defense Minister, Bismillah Khan Mohammadi, that was targeted. A suicide bomber in a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device rammed his vehicle that was followed by at least 4 men storming the house. You can see the damage that was inflicted upon. The houses are completely damaged. At least 35 civilians were said to be evacuated safely by the Afghan National Security Forces.
The people of Kabul know who is at fault. Immediately after the explosion, they marched on the streets. Some of them were carrying the Afghan national flag. It was a morale booster for the army. They have the people in their corner. But will morale alone be enough? The Taliban are a ruthless lot. They call yesterday's attack a martyrdom. It's classic Taliban strategy: target top military officials and romanticize suicide attacks. Reports say more assassinations are being planned. At what point do we call this a civil war? The capital has been attacked now. There is massive fighting in the provinces of Herat and Kandahar. Thousands are being evacuated or displaced. It's time we contemplate the worst in Afghanistan. What if the Taliban takes over? What can and should the world do? What can India do to protect its interests and investments? The Taliban say there is nothing to worry about for India. Let me quote what their spokesperson said about Indian projects. We do not threaten or oppose economic projects by any country. We are in favor of other countries investing in Afghanistan. And then he goes on to say, we want good relations with India as an important country in the region. But don't mistake this for goodwill, because the Taliban want something in return. They want India to stop supporting the Afghan government. No military support, no guns, no civilian contractors. Talk about an impossible demand. India has invested nearly $3 billion in Afghanistan. Why would New Delhi trust terrorists to protect this investment? It's a bad idea, and the Taliban themselves showed exactly why. On Tuesday night, Taliban terrorists tried to attack the Salma Dam again. It's an India-built dam in the Herat province. The spokesperson for the Afghan Defense Ministry said the attack was thwarted. The Taliban were driven back by the army, they said. This is the second time they've tried to attack this dam. It tells you why the Taliban cannot be trusted. They talk about being investment savvy, but on the ground, they're attacking foreign projects. The fact is, there is no Taliban 2.0. They're the same ruthless terrorists from 1996, but this time they face a spirited resistance from the people of Afghanistan. What they need is international support. Unfortunately, they're getting it from some quarters. The Afghan government has called for a special UN Security Council session. Guess who chairs the UNSC this month? India. Foreign Minister Jaishankar will be flying out to New York later this month. This is India's time and India's chance to help Afghanistan, to convince the global community to bolster the Kabul-based government. Let's move to today's biggest headline from the United States. It does not have anything to do with the pandemic or with Afghanistan. It is about a man who emerged as a hero when New York was overwhelmed by the pandemic last year. I'm talking about New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. An independent probe has found that Cuomo has sexually harassed several women. He's being accused of non-consensual touching, making offensive comments, and creating a hostile work environment for women around him. What's more, his probe was authorized by the man himself.
First, I want you to know directly from me that I never touched anyone inappropriately or made inappropriate sexual advances. I am 63 years old.
This is Andrew Cuomo. He is the governor of New York. You might remember him from his daily press briefings in 2020, or from the banter with his brother on live television. Cuomo had emerged as a hero when New York was in the middle of a deadly COVID-19 wave. 1 year on, his reputation has fallen, just like the cases of Wuhan virus in New York City.
Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women, and in doing so violated federal
and state law.
You heard that? Cuomo is accused of harassing current and former employees of New York. Allegations range from non-consensual touching, making offensive comments, to creating a hostile work environment for women. Complaints emerged in the winter of 2020. A probe was ordered by none other than Cuomo himself. Investigators spoke to 179 women. Complaints: New York State employees, 74,000 pieces of evidence were reviewed, including emails, texts, audio files, and pictures. Finally, the findings of the investigation were read out to the public.
The Independent's investigation found that Governor Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women, many of whom were young women, by engaging in unwanted groping, kisses, hugging, and by making inappropriate comments.
What does this mean? What happens now? To answer that, we must first learn a little about Cuomo. This is a man who has spent much of his adult life in the public eye. Cuomo's parents were migrants from Italy. He grew up in Queens and has been the governor of New York since 2011. Cuomo is a Democrat. Under him, the state passed quite a number of remarkable laws, including those concerning gun safety, gender equality, minimum wage, and paid family leave. Cuomo was expected to run for a fourth term in office in 2022. He had already begun fundraising, but now some of the most prominent Democrats are calling for him to step down from public office. We are referring to U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and both senators from New York, Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand.
No elected official is above the law. The people of New York deserve better leadership in the governor's office.
Joining the chorus is Cuomo's old friend and now U.S. President Joe Biden.
Let's take one thing at a time. I think you should resign.
You heard the demands. Now hear Cuomo's defense.
I do banter with people. I do tell jokes, some better than others. I am the same person in public as I am in private. You have seen me do it on TV through all my briefings and for 40 years before. I now understand that there are generational or cultural perspectives that frankly I hadn't fully appreciated. And I have learned from this.
Remember, it was Cuomo who authorized the probe. He asked the people of New York to not judge him until the investigation was complete. Now, New Yorkers have a verdict.
But there don't need pigs running the government.
I thought he should have resigned a long time ago.
I hope he has the decency to resign today.
What if Cuomo doesn't? The state assembly has the power to impeach him. New York governors have been impeached in the past. In 1913, for example, William Sulzer was impeached after spending less than a year in office. So what's next for Cuomo? The civil investigation will not directly lead to criminal charges, but the New York police can use the evidence to build a case against Cuomo. The district attorney has already asked complainants to come forward. He has requested for the investigative material. So a criminal charge against New York Governor Andrew Cuomo may be a matter of time. Bureau report, beyond Reuters 1.
Turkey is not history the wildfire. The people of Turkey blamed their president for the way things are playing out. This last week, more than 130 wildfires have raged through southern Turkey. The forest is still burning. Locals seem carrying buckets of water because the state did not have any firefighting trains to douse the flames. Critics say the Erdogan government did not prepare for this crisis resolution.
The southern coastline of Turkey is on fire. Thick plumes of smoke appear in the sky. Each time firefighters bring one blaze under control, magma starts burning. For 7 straight days, large parts of the Turkish Mediterranean coastline have been burning.
More than 130 fires in over 30 provinces have been extinguished, but firefighters are still on the job. Those who lost their homes are now demanding answers from the government. They say the Erdogan administration's response was very poor.
If there had been more firefighting in the population, which could have happened, other fires would have closed and suspicions. Because the whole village was down and our homes were down. If there was a firefighter in our neighborhood, this would be happening.
The result of the floods is this. Huge swaths of pine forest and agricultural land were destroyed. At least 8 people have died, including 2 firefighters. More than 10,000 people were evacuated due to the fire. In addition to the damaged homes, resorts, and hotels were left. Turkish authorities fear a future floods, even if new resistant workers of health would say.
I ask the allegations that we do not accept unconditional water. Once again, I would like to reiterate that not just today, not just during such a disaster, but it is out of question to reject the offers that to us because of pride and arrogance of other forests are working.
But soon after that statement, Turkey relented. It accepted foreign assistance from several countries. Ukraine, Russia, Azerbaijan, Spain, and Vietnam sent water to Ukraine. The European Union deployed soldiers at Greece. Now Turkey is European Greece because it did not have any of its own. Soon after the fires broke out, Ankara admitted that it had no sense to this on the state view, many of the movements decided to extinguish the fire themselves. They filled up buckets and water bottles and tried to contain the fire. But they say the people of Turkey are paying the price for their arrogance against it. We won as well.
Others decided to contribute. Economists have their own tools like GDP and average food, all campaign competition. Tonight, I'll give you some real simple. If your prime minister's residence is on Airbnb, chances are you'll choose you. The prime minister's question is around time was should residents report to the those who directed out or home. This could be anything you want. The wedding, the graduation ceremony, maybe a fashion show, or simply a place to chill. Are you really thinking where is the downtown? Surely the prime minister will not be homeless, and he won't be. The non-farm will never eliminate the Christian residents. We discovered that Canadians is exploring this option to bring it. Pakistan has not enough money for that. So non-farm residents is now about mansion instead. Or not the Christian residents. The original plan was to divide it into college or university. And again, it doesn't work. So instead of pumping money into a building, Pakistan is looking to make money off of it. This statistic resident the phone really belongs to them. Our authorities will get along with them. The federal family contacting the countries that will want to ensure discipline and decorum as a nation. If you're renting the prime minister's house, the prime minister's house, money of the town, this is serious problem. Imran Khan is not being tricked. He's been forced to that point. Pakistan's economy is rising. The national GDP has about 19 billion each year. 19 billion. Imran Khan came to power, comes to turn around. We are gone. How? Because we do. By the way, Pakistan is like a friend of the Imran Khan auctioned off 61 luxury cars owned by the government. Same year, we also sold some luxury. Okay, the Rajasthan decided he had no use for them. These options may sound like a great initiative, but it's like putting stories in them. There's never going to be. Pakistan's sovereign debt has entered age ago. Total liabilities of debt have been $294 billion. That's 109% of GDP. Renting out homes and selling property loans won't cut it. Take any prominent lender. Chances are Pakistan's on their list, whether it's the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, or the Chinese. Even Beijing wants their money back, and they won't take for any effort to the party's progress. Imran Khan is the face of the Ukraine bank. It's important to all the other leaders. The excessive Pakistani government has been handling this economy. And at this quick time, they've cut the army with money. There's no sense of Imran Khan continued this tradition. This year he allocated 18.4% of the budget to military. What's the plan? Shoot the letters? The Pakistani military's wish this never ends. They justify it by talking about the so-called military leg, how much investment they will do around 50%. Pakistan's austerity measures simply haven't worked. And the latest giving was higher. Who do you think will rent out the Prime Minister's residence? Let me give you a clue. In 2019, the same residence was rented out for a wedding. The bride was a daughter of the area of a Queen County. Two kinds of people have the money to distribute. There's the Pakistan Army and their students. No country likes the one austerity with much shopping excessive and outdoors. So that you need to do the practice of the scheme. Pakistan and India, their investments come to one source, that's China, and Uzbekistan. And this system is mostly under world class industry, which I don't take that seriously. What's left? Cars, buses, houses. The embarrassment is in proportions. Pakistan, where you sell chicken. How is Pakistan's army more than China? Disguising the students on Chinese tech giants is using every trick in the book to raise women. It's become a successful business in China. The latest victim is Tencent. The company lost $60 billion to 60 billion. Why? Because the state media has been criticized online videos. We call it electronic drugs, spiritual opium. Let's go tell you how China's crackdown on big tech is
what happens when the state turns against you? Some of the biggest technology companies in China are finding out what happened. After taking down Jack Ma, banning a right-wing service, cracking down on online education, Beijing has found a new target, gaming. A state-run outlet published a scathing piece against digital games. It called them electronic drugs and attacked the industry of vending spiritual opium. The speech called out Tencent, one of the biggest tech players in China. Tencent owns a game called Honor of Kings. Reports say it has been one of the world's top grossing games for the past 2 years. But now, the article by the state press has proved invented. Tencent stock went into a tailspin after it was published. The company lost as much as $60 billion in a day. Almost 11% of Tencent's market share was wiped off almost instantly. But then came a twist. The scathing piece against Tencent was suddenly removed from the internet. Tencent's stock stabilized, but the company got a message from Beijing. It has decided to regulate the game. The app will limit the playing time of kids under the age of 20. They can now play for only 1 hour on weekdays and 2 hours on holidays. The same age group will also be blocked from making in-app purchases. What happened to Tencent is just the latest in a series of moves by the Chinese state against tech companies. China's market watchdog has now cracked down on at least 35 internet companies. The biggest victim is Jack Ma's Alibaba Group. It was asked to pop up a record $2.8 billion fine in April this year. 3 days after the regulator issued orders against Alibaba, it went after 34 tech companies. Many of them were threatened. But because all major companies have been fined, they have lost money too. Alibaba, Meituan, Tencent, and Kuaishou Technology are the 4 biggest tech companies in China. By the end of June, they had lost about 20% of their combined worth due to the state's crackdown. Even foreign investors were blindsided by Beijing's actions. So far, they have lost more than $1 trillion, and they have no idea when the crackdown will stop. What seems clear is why China is going after its big tech companies. Beijing wants to rein in the platforms. It wants to curtail their freedoms in the market. It wants the platforms to keep data of the Chinese users at home, and it wants the entrepreneurs to submit to the Communist Party's will. It is safe to assume that Beijing will not stop until it ensures complete capitulation of Chinese tech giants. Your report beyond World is now.
Still to West Asia, there has been another flare up. 3 rockets were fired into Israel from Lebanon. 2 of them struck an Israeli town. Israelis retaliated with 7 rounds of artillery. This comes days after an Israeli managed tank was struck by a drone off the coast of Oman, part of a larger shadow war. Next report finds out.
Peace is a fleeting state at best, West Asia. It was less than 3 months ago that fires from the 11-day fight between Israel and Palestine were down. Israel today is burning once again. Israel's air raid sirens once again went off this morning. 2 rockets struck the northern town of Kiryat Shimona, which is home to 28,000 people. This is where the town is located on the map. Like you can see, very close to Israel's border with Lebanon. The rockets were fired from across the border. South Lebanon, to be specific, it's an area that's under the sway of the Hezbollah. It's a terror group backed by Iran. The rockets launched to flee. Israel retaliated, fired several rounds of artillery. Frequently, Israeli military said 3 rockets have been mostly fired since. During the 11-day fighting day, 3 rockets were fired from Lebanon. Some were launched on the 20th of July. They caused no damage or injuries. The timing of Wednesday's strike is not surprising. Just look at what's happening at sea. There are fires and people threats. On the 29th of July, it was suspected drone struck an Israeli managed tank. 2 crew members in Britain and in the Navy were killed. This happened on Oman, and Tehran denied any involvement. Israel began rallying global action against Iran. The newly appointed Prime Minister Naftali Bennett leading the front.
Regarding the ship and on the issue of Iran in general, we are working to manage the war. At the same time, we also need to act to Iran already knows the price we exact when someone threatens our security. The Iranians need to understand that it is possible to sit passively in Iran and to deny the entire Middle East there. That's no good.
We are capable of acting alone was Bennett's message to the West. On the 1st of August, the United Kingdom released a statement. Iran must end such attacks itself. The United States joined it very later. It follows a pattern similar to that. Days later, rockets struck Israel in an area controlled by Iran-backed terror group. You get the pattern. Rockets were the latest strike in this shadow war. Israel and West Asia as a whole is fighting far too many of these shadow wars. Peace in this region will continue to be fleeting at best, as all stakeholders join the peaking table. We will promote beyond Israel.
That is a wrap. You're looking as always with Gravitas Images. Thanks for watching.
Ugh. Ugh! Fucking asshole! guys. Oh. Jump, jump. Like I didn't just tell you. And I am doing something. The one fucking time that I am doing something. Apparently, I can fuck all day long. This is fucking great. Fucking bullshit. Hi. This is fucking awesome.
Bye.